Well, good afternoon, everybody. It's 2:35 at the Montgomery County Board of Elections in Gaithersburg. I want to welcome everybody that's here. It shows the civic interest in what we're doing, and we really appreciate your participation. We have a quorum. All 7 of us are here on the board, so we're going to begin the meeting. The first item we have is an approval of minutes, but we don't want to bore our guests with that. So we're gonna put the approval of minutes off until the next meeting. So we're gonna move approval of minutes to the next meeting, and I think we'll go right to public comments because I know there's people here to address some of the issues we're looking at today. So why don't we do the public comments? We'd like to keep your comments to 3 minutes or so, but if you go further, Margaret will smack you.
There was no assault. There's nothing else that happened there. There's no assault that happened.
Okay, so, and then after that, because we don't want people to be here when we discuss some of the most boring things we do, we're going to go into the 12th early voting site item, and then move the meeting, following all that. Okay, so Lisa, we have public comments. And by the way, if somebody hasn't signed up, but they've made the effort to come here and want to speak, just tell Lisa, because a lot of you don't know the procedure to sign up. But if you want to speak, the board is going to be mad at me, but if anybody wants to speak that hasn't signed up, we can allow that.
Okay, Mr. President, we have several people who asked to speak and address the board in advance. So the first person we have is Rachel Evans.
Okay.
Are you here? Yeah. No, you can have a seat right here. Sorry. Thank you.
Welcome, Rachel.
Your comments have been distributed to the board.
Okay. So I'm just going to read you what I wrote. Thank you to the Board of Elections for giving me the time to speak today. My name is Rachel Evans, and I've lived in Silver Spring for over 25 years, with the last 11 years as a homeowner in White Oak. I voted since I was 18, and I'm passionate about all Americans having the right and access to vote. This is something I learned from my father, who fought for the right for all Americans to vote, regardless of socioeconomic status during the 60s. When early voting was introduced, I immediately started voting that way for every primary and every general election for its convenience. I feel this right should be given to all people living and working in Montgomery County. I'm here to advocate for an additional 12th early voting location in Montgomery County and for it to be at the White Oak Community Recreation Center. This location can accommodate residents from White Oak and Route 29 surrounding areas, those who work in the area like FDA, Adventists at White Oak Hospital, and other Science Gateway employees that want to vote before returning to their homes in other parts of the county. The White Oak Community Recreation Center is already used as an election polling site. It has the needed parking and electrical requirements, and it is located in a heavily populated community of voters from diverse backgrounds, cultures, ages, and socioeconomics. What unites them is that many of them do not have vehicles and rely on public transit, which is limited due to the absence of metro trains and the fact that bus service is limited on the weekends. The nearest early voting centers to White Oak are in the Marilyn Fraser Community Recreation Center and the Silver Spring Building, which are both over 4 miles from White Oak, and is difficult to access by public transportation. Both of these locations have history of long lines during the early voting and on election day, which makes it difficult for the elderly and persons with disabilities to wait in the long lines to vote. The White Oak Community Recreation Center, on the other hand, is for many within walking distance, and early voting is an effective way to reduce election day wait times. It's a less than a 10-minute walk from my community, and it will be a benefit to my friends and neighbors. I was also there on election day for the 2018 primary and general election, and the setup created has a very good flow for people voting. In the words of the late Congressman Elijah Cummings, this is not Russia. This is the United States of America, and I will fight to my death to make sure every citizen has the right to vote, because it is the essence of our democracy. Please do not let Montgomery County be a place where it is difficult for all citizens to vote. We should make it easier and accessible for all eligible voters. The additional voting site in White Oak Community Center will be a great service to all of those and ensure those without transportation or ability challenges are not discouraged from participating in the voting process. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, Mr. President, we have Ms. Barbara Sanders.
Welcome, Barbara.
Chairman Shalek and members of the board, as Barbara Sanders, as the Montgomery County League of Women Voters liaison to the Board of Elections, I expressly thanks to the board once again for opening the early voting center selection process to the public comment. As I mentioned last month, the League has no position on the sites of specific early voting centers. We recognize that the board's choices of the current early voting centers greatly exceeds the state's 80% geographical goal by covering over 90% of the county's registered voters within 5 miles of one of the 11 centers. However, we do support providing the easiest path possible to encourage citizens to vote, and there are locations that are near the edge or outside of those 5-mile radii in communities with denser populations and a history of longer wait terms. We find it regrettable that some of the rhetoric surrounding last month's decision and the actions that have led to its reconsideration today became highly partisan. The board has given due consideration reviewing the list of staff-vetted sites that meet the state requirements. Comments from elected officials and interested organizations and citizens were heard. The choice on whether to select an additional site seemed to revolve on different views of the duties of board members, with relevant points made by all, primarily ease of voting access versus cost of services to county citizens. The League also has to weigh those issues on many of our endeavors. It is our hope that the members consider this decision with their fiduciary duty of care and loyalty to this board ahead of personal and partisan interests. The possibility of adding a new early voting site is a complex decision. It's shared by passage of state legislation, by elected representatives from the county, by approval of the funding by locally elected representatives in the county, and by you, the board members. Each group and individual involved should give due attention given to the needs of the county residents whom all of you are charged with serving. We also hope that discussion and coverage of the decision remains above the fray of partisan politics. Our electoral process needs to encourage the widest participation of all of our citizens and not seen as a partisan battleground. Again, thank you for including public comments in your consideration.
Thank you, Barbara.
Next, we have Ashley Grimes.
Welcome.
Read my letter as well. Thank you for taking the time
Sorry,
today.
it's coming now.
My name is Ashley Grimes, and I'm a member of the Whitehall Square Homeowners Association Board and a resident of White Oak, and I would like to voice my support for the addition of a 12th early voting site at the White Oak Community Recreation Center. As a new resident of the White Oak area in 2018, the lack of early voting facilities is concerning to me. All county residents should be able to access early voting, as it greatly decreases the volume of voters on election day and allows residents who do not have flexible schedules to vote at a time convenient to them. The White Oak Community Recreation Center is located in a high-density area that is only going to continue to grow with the addition of the Adventist at White Oak Hospital and proposed Viva White Oak initiatives, making it a great choice for an early voting location for our expanding community. Last year, I was able to travel to Wheaton to vote due to the longer lines at both Silver Spring early voting locations. And while I'm able to do this, many residents are not, which inhibits their ability to make their voices heard. Voting is integral to the democratic process, which is more important now than it has ever been. I hope that my voice as a member of this wonderful community is taken into consideration by the Board of Elections, as it is critical that we stand up for those who do not have the same opportunities to express their needs. With this in mind, please consider adding an additional early voting site at the White Oak Community Recreation Center. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ashley.
Thank you. Next, we have Richard Jurgna.
Dick?
His was already distributed.
Sorry, my hearing aids are not working.
That's all right, Dick. Welcome.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Dick Jurgeny. I live in Darnestown, Maryland, in election District 6. I come here today to point out the lack of opportunity to participate in the early voting. The voters of election District 6 and 4 other election districts in the western half of Montgomery County. I have provided each of you with a map. And that map shows in addition to the election districts, it shows the number of early voting centers in each district. As you well know, there are 13 election districts, and of those 13, 4 have 2 early voting centers, 3 have 1 early voting center, and 6 have no early voting centers. 5 of the 6 districts with no early voting sites are in the western half of the county. If I were looking at this as a partisan, I'd have to think that there must be some political reason why there should be a geographical mislocation of election services to the voters of the western half of the county. In the past, the argument for placement of the early voting centers has centered around the number of voters in certain areas of the county. Sadly, that ignores the fact that the distance a voter has to travel is also a major consideration on how convenient it is for the voter to exercise their right and privileges to vote. If you believe, as I do, every vote counts, I think you will also agree when you consider the distance a majority of the voters of the western half of the county have to travel to reach an early voting center, that a new site should be established in either election district 3 or 6. Therefore, I respectfully recommend for your consideration the Nancy Dasick Community Recreation Center on Travilla Road, that's in election district 6, as the best choice to remedy this geographic appearance of political gerrymandering. Secondly, if the state board is going to overrule your decision again next year, let's get ahead of them. Let's propose Poolsville High School. That's in election district 3. Or maybe we should reorganize completely and put one site in each election district. That's my wife's idea, and I listen to her suggestions. Thank you for your consideration.
Thanks, Dick. Thank you.
A question.
Dick, she has a question.
Mr. Durgan, thank you for your testimony. A couple of questions. Maybe you've answered the question in your last sentence as to why you focused on election districts, because perhaps it was not your own suggestion. But is there a particular reason why you focused on election districts which are not necessarily population-based versus, for example, legislative districts, which are both based on geography and population?
No, actually, I kind of assumed that the election districts were already laid out and that would be the natural area in which you would consider them.
Well, yeah, I mean, in reality, the population of the election districts is significantly different from one to the other. So, for example, the 11th election district is all 1 precinct, and the 3rd election district is all 2 precincts. So, anyway, the only other thing I was going to suggest is that while you are correct that there is no early voting site in the 3rd or the 6th election district, there are some election districts that you didn't know where we do have early voting sites. So, for example, you have a 0 listed for the 10th election district, but the Potomac Community Center, which the board added 4 years ago, is in the 10th election district. You also have a 0 for the 9th election district, but the Boer Center, the activity center at Boer Park in Gaithersburg is in the 9th election district. And I guess we may have just a geographic question as to exactly where the Damascus early voting site is located. I thought it was in the 12th election district. You have 2 of them listed in the 2nd, and Germantown is clearly in the 2nd. But there are, the way I count it, there are 4 election districts that have 0, not 6, because we have, as a matter of fact, in the last few elections, added sites to be more geographically diverse.
Well, I may have misunderstood, and I apologize if what I did was misleading. I couldn't find in the Montgomery County Registered Voters list an indication of election districts. And when I looked at the first number of the precincts,
Right.
that indicated to me that that was the election district. And that's the way in which I defined where by the address that the center was in, what election district it served.
And my understanding is the same as yours, that the first number in the precinct is the election district. What I just did in order to determine these is I just went to the map over here that lists the early voting sites and looked at the precincts that they were located in. I mean, I do know for sure that Potomac is in the 10th election district and that Gaithersburg is in the 9th. And those are in the western part of the county. There actually are quite a few early voting sites in the western part of the county. But I do take your point that there are a number of election districts where we don't have any early voting sites.
That actually was like mid-county to me. Which one? Not west.
Thanks, Dave.
Anyways, okay. Potomac is not the western part. Potomac is the lower part of Montgomery County.
We'll get to a discussion here.
Okay.
Thank you.
Lisa?
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay.
Next we have Scott Goldberg.
Welcome, Scott.
Thank you. Good afternoon. You have my written testimony, so I'm going to just tell a story and be brief because it sounds like a lot of people
You
want to
have
speak.
3 minutes though.
Excellent. So in 2014, I had the opportunity to work with then County Executive Ike Leggett, and I would go around with him when he made public appearances, and since it was a campaign, he was saying sort of the accomplishments that the county had and himself, and he would go around, he would say that he had served in Vietnam as an Army officer, and then he navigated the county through the Great Recession to keep our AAA bond rating. And then he would say he was the president of the County Executives of America. And I remember the first couple times I heard it, I'd be staring at my phone and people would start clapping. Like that was the loudest applause line. And I looked up because I had never heard of this organization, and probably none of us have really heard of this organization or have any idea what it does. So after a couple of these appearances, I would go ask audience members, why did you clap loudest when he said he was the president of the County Executives of America? And he said, because it shows that Montgomery County is the gold standard for how government is run. And in keeping these remarks brief, I think our Board of Elections and I think you guys do a very, very good job of running elections in our county. We are consistently impressed by how things are run. Now, in 2018, we had a minor blip at the Brazener Center. And I think in keeping with that gold standard of how our county runs government and runs elections, I think the opportunity to say, hey, we had this problem, it really wasn't our fault because we have confines and different restrictions, but we are going to be the ones to make that repair. And it is going to be by putting a 12th early voting site and locating it in White Oak, so the people of those communities can have an easier opportunity and easier access to vote. Thank you.
Thanks, Scott.
Next we have Paul B. Ellis.
Welcome.
President Schalik, Vice President Kozumay, members of the board, thank you for taking my testimony today in support of a 12th early voting site at White Oak. I'm a lifelong resident of Silver Spring and an avid early voter. I was an election judge in the 2014 primary in Silver Spring, and before that I was a future vote student aide at my precinct in Silver Spring. Having returned here after observing elections in Ohio, Montgomery County runs its elections extremely well. But if there's one thing we could do better, it would be to reduce lines in our most popular early voting locations so more people could vote more conveniently. It's important for all parts of the county to have EV centers that are easily accessible by all methods of transit. But anyone could tell you that our 11 centers aren't used equally. Similarly, the population of the county is not increasing in all places at equal rates, causing the county to institute a moratorium on new residential construction in the district on the map in red in this oval here. Schools there are beyond 120% of their capacity. Many of the districts fall in the eastern part of the county along the Route 29 corridor, including between the Brazener and Silver Spring Civic Building sites. There are other overcrowded areas just up New Hampshire from White Oak. I personally observed the long lines at the end of early voting in Silver Spring on Thursday, November 1st, 2018, which are documented below in pictures that my neighbor Ari posted on Twitter and that I took. The line exited the door of the Great Hall, wrapped around the inside of the building through all the auxiliary rooms on the ground floor, snaked around the atrium, out the door, across the plaza, and was starting to go down Fenton Street. The only time I've ever seen anything like it was in 2012 in the presidential general election on election day at my precinct when I was doing Future Vote. Lines like these, combined with misdirected voters of Praisner on election night itself, mean that the board has a responsibility to ensure that it maintains voters' trust in this area of the county. While people may still erroneously go to Praisner on election night, a White Oak site would convert some of those otherwise provisional election night ballots to early voting ballots and reduce lines. The investment made in a 12th early voting center will avert the need for emergency intervention on election night. New voters are moving to the area who may be unregistered and want to register same day. According to Dr. Z and board staff, the board is bracing for an influx of voter registration applications with the new state law and for the additional challenges duplicate registrations will cause. This can only exacerbate existing wait times. Residents of White Oak, including in the mammoth apartment complexes like the Enclave Apartments, need a proximal place with a shorter line so they don't lose faith in our electoral process. They work long hours and weekends and need to care for children. Having a location near more new immigrant populations will result in more multilingual election judges and aides who can clarify a process that could be strange and daunting to anyone brand new to it. They may in turn serve the board throughout the county for years to come. So a White Oak early voting center would pay dividends, easing judge recruitment and aiding a county facing budget cuts. The alternative is discouraging new voters from voting with long lines during the only times they're not at work or going there. White Oak is clearly the area of the county most in need of shorter lines, shorter voting commutes, and whose faith in voting integrity must be made solid. It's the most overcrowded area of the county, and the Silver Spring Civic Building and Praisner Center have consistently been the most popular and among the most popular early voting locations, especially in presidential elections. With the potential for a crisis of public confidence in election administration and the changes in state law, White Oak is the right location for a new early voting site. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next we have Graciela Rivera Oven.
Welcome home. Former board member.
Came back. I timed it. It was 3 minutes and 2 seconds.
Okay.
So here I go. Good afternoon, President Shalek, Vice President, and members of the board. My name is Graciela Rivera Oven, and I'm a citizen of Montgomery County where I have lived for over 40 years. As a former member of this body, it's always great to see you all. You know how much I value your work and your dedication and your commitment to serve on this body. It is with sadness and a heavy heart that I am before you today because of a topic that was discussed at your last meeting about Future Vote, an issue that I have been involved with from its conception. I still remember my long talks with Nancy Dasek, who was the chair at the time, about this program that was implemented and her full support for Future Vote. Although Nancy and I were from different political parties, we always had a wonderful friendship on and off the court. She mostly beat me when we played tennis, and she values civic involvement to its core. So imagine my disappointment when I heard about the rhetoric that came out of this body to eliminate young people from participating in this well-recognized national program because of their immigration status. It is exactly these citizens who should serve as Future Vote participants in a county that is a majority minority. In other words, you will be excluding young people like me. When I was a junior at Gaithersburg High School, I met Ed Borg, who was running for mayor for my city, the city of Gaithersburg. He invited me to join him and Sidney Katz for the campaign for mayor and city council. This was my first experience about democracy and politics. Needless to say, I was totally hooked. Since then, I have been involved in numerous political campaigns. Eventually, I even ran for county council last year. When I started on that first campaign, I was a U.S. resident. You see, it takes a while to become a citizen. I am wearing a U.S. flag pin today. To you, it might just mean a pin of the flag, but to me, it means a lot more. It was given to me by Mayor Borg the day after I became a U.S. citizen. He took me out to lunch. He gave me the pin along with a U.S. flag and a copy of the Constitution of our country. His exact words are with me today. When you see injustice of any kind, speak up. He also gave me a voter registration form and said, This is the most fundamental right you have as an American. Do not let anyone speak for you. Make sure you vote. And so I did. And today I am speaking for the thousands of young people in our schools who participate in Future Vote, almost 41,000 of them since 2004, who one day, like me, will become proud U.S. citizens. I know some folks are not happy with the tan that Montgomery County has gotten over the past 20 years, but it is what it is. In fact, it makes us better people and a more inclusive community, just as the young people in our schools. Yet we, the adults, are the ones with the prejudices. My response to that is get over it, embrace the tan. At the end of the day, we are all members of this community, and we all want the same thing. We hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by the Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. I stand by the statement, and knowing most of you at this table, I know you do as well. Let the anti-immigrant rhetoric at Pennsylvania Avenue stay at Pennsylvania Avenue. It was never a part of this table. The job of this board is to represent all the members of our community, including the Future Vote participants. A little bit about White Oak. You all know how I feel about White Oak as when I was a member of this board. It's a growing community, and I'm sure most folks, there would like to be more folks from White Oak here today, but transportation is an issue. The time of our meetings are an issue. So with that being said, they have nothing to worry about. You know why? Because they have you. They have you to make sure that the people in White Oak have a voice at this table. I know you will also do the right thing, and I know you will recommend White Oak as a 12th early voting center. And remember when I recommended Damascus as an early voting center, and I got a lot of pushback from people in my party, but it was the right thing to do. Thank you.
Next, Mr. President, we have Marcus Alzona.
Okay. Marcus here? Oh, here. Welcome, Marcus.
You can pronounce it. I sent the PDF, but I sent it too late. So I can just, well, I don't know if this will really project.
Is anybody?
Do you want to?
Yeah,
want to try that?
Yeah.
Did you want to just project it on the screen from here? That might be easier.
Janet,
No, from.
Janet, our IT manager, will assist you.
So hello, I'm Marcus Alzona. I'm a Montgomery County, Down County resident, born in Montgomery County actually, and I'm a child of an immigrant, and my kids are children of an immigrant as well. And I'm here to, I'm also in information technology and geospatial systems, and I'm here to show the data that's out there, and those are two of the three proposed new voting centers. And to talk about, I think the issue was brought up earlier about these are the Montgomery County election districts. Now the election districts are made for geographic diversity. In other words, they're in generally the same geographic size, with the idea of when you're traveling to your voting location, you have to it should be within a certain distance. So when you look at this, you do see that most of the districts are, majority of districts are, let's say, down county and mid county, and then you have a few in the north and the west, but it's very few. So you have to, if you're a voter and trying to get to an early voting district, you have to travel a large distance. Now, in terms of when you say one of the issues that came up earlier was, population, right? So if you look at the population, yes. If you notice that the Wheaton Silver Spring area is our largest populated voting area, and it does have 3. But all the others really have 1, if they have any at all. And then in the West, you really have a sparse, I want to say sparse representation for early voting. So now, when you select an early voting district, it's for distance. How many workers and people you have there affects the lines. So if the county council, or if however it's funded, has put in money to put additional people at those voting districts down county, where I live in down county, but if there's additional people working there, that's the way you reduce the lines. The way you reduce the selection of the voting location is how you reduce the distance traveled by each voter. And so that's why it would make more sense, to put it in some place that does not have a district already. Just because, if you're talking about equity, the distance that each voter has to travel is inherent in how you decide where to locate the voting centers. You can stack them up. If you want to deal with longer lines, you stack them up. You don't necessarily have to make a new voting center, because that won't directly affect it. It's really the total number of staff in any given region, any given voting district. So I guess that's what I wanted to throw out there. And additionally, if you do see on the southeast corner of the county, there are actual early voting locations in Prince George's County across the border. So the general area is covered. And so when another factor is when you place an early voting location for Montgomery County, you should try to, in some sense, if there are people in the county who are underserved versus, not that, somebody in PG County is a Maryland voter as well, but, the Montgomery County Board should make sure to focus on Montgomery County, the people in Montgomery County who are going to vote.
Are you suggesting that people in the East County should vote in the Prince George's locations?
No, I'm saying that people, if you look at early voting data, you can vote wherever, at any Maryland location.
That's not entirely accurate. You can vote in any Maryland location on the state elections. But if you're out of county, Margaret, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm not sure that the Prince George's locations would have Montgomery County ballots in them.
Mm-hmm. They don't. No, they don't. You'd have to vote provisionally, and then whatever races you'd be eligible to vote. If you voted your correct ballot, the board would count those races, but they would not have. Not have the Montgomery County.
So if a congressional district was the same, or if a Senate race or a statewide race, that would be included, but anything that's only Montgomery County would not be available.
Those are the except in part provisional ballots that you all canvass and tabulate. Yes.
Thank you.
So your recommendation would be, I didn't hear it specifically stated.
It would be either the one in the Bardstown election district, which is the Nancy something.
Nancy Daisy.
Or something else that sort of fills in the geographic blanks. Yeah, the western or northern, or somewhere that fills in more of the geographic.
Thanks, Mark.
Thank you.
Next, Mr. President, we have Daniel Caroma.
Welcome, Daniel, again.
Thank you, Mr. President. This is somebody's phone.
I think it's Mr. Alonso.
I just want to make sure. Good afternoon, Mr. President, members of the board. I'm Daniel Caroma, and thank you again for indulging me this opportunity to tell you many of the stories. By the way, I'm a engineering scientist, and I do
Me too.
data. Oh, you are?
Yes.
Well, maybe we have more in common.
You may understand it.
So in terms of when people talk about
They
data,
don't talk too much. Go ahead.
that's why when people talk about data, I always want to make sure that I look at, we look at all the variables that go into the production of that data. Again, I live in White Oak. I'm a long-term resident there, and today you're going to hear from many of my neighbors, and you've heard from many. In terms of the data, we want to make sure, you want to make sure people get access to voting where they are. Right, so that's the whole concept of early voting, where if somebody goes to work, right, they're able to go to an early voting site and vote once they're in Montgomery County. And I totally didn't appreciate the fact that somebody's telling me to go to Prince George's County to vote as a Montgomery County resident, to say there are a polling site there. So can we just make sure we take that into consideration, that you listen to the people who live there. Me and my neighbors, many of my neighbors do not drive. And so even when we talk about weekday traveling to early voting sites, remember, as I testified before you the last time, my neighbors, many of them wake up at 5, 6 a.m. in the morning. Why? Because they have to go to work. And many of them work in the healthcare spaces, so they have to go and relieve many of the family members who have seniors who live with them at home, so their mom or dads or grandparents, and that need care. Many of my neighbors are nurses, and so they have to go relieve those family members for the family members to go to work. And then when they finish their 7 a.m. to 3 p.m. work, they have to go to their second job. And they do that 5 days a week. Weekends is when they do chores, and Sundays when they go to church. Well, guess what? We all know that if you take public transportation, that the schedule for weekdays is different for weekends. And so this is the challenge. Access is about how do we get people to go to the site, but also how long will it take for them to vote. I'm again appealing to you, let's do the right thing for our residents. We are all equal residents in Montgomery County. Yes, there are needs all over the county, but many have access. Many can go into their car and drive. In my neighborhood, and many of my neighbors that you will hear from, those who are not here that we're advocating for, don't have that pleasure, they don't have that leisure to go into their vehicles. I gave you an example the last time that it takes an hour and a half on a weekend to go from White Oak to downtown Silver Spring at the Civic Building. And then you have to stand in line for about another hour. And then another hour and a half to come back. So anyone who is looking to vote, majority of my neighbors, basically, that's almost 4 hours of their day. Well, the other way is Praisner. Well, again, these are weekends now. Praisner, there's no direct public transportation that goes to Praisner. If you're dropped off at Briggs Cheney Road, you have to walk 1.5 miles to go to Praisner. Where I came from, that is almost unacceptable. That's why in Sierra Leone, election day is a holiday, so that people can have access to it. So I don't have a prepared statement because I really want to speak to your heart. This is what it's all about. How do we make sure we make it accessible for people to vote? And I, again, pleading to you guys to do the right thing so that you will choose the White Oak Rec Center, which is a multi- and intergenerational building. There's a senior center there. That's where my son plays basketball. My son participated in Future Vote. So him and his friend, and he's bilingual. So there's not going to be need for Spanish, French, Amharic, volunteers there. So I plead to you again, do the right thing and make White Oak Rec Center the 12th early voting site. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next we have Sharon Bauer.
Welcome, Sharon.
Hi, thank you. And thank you for letting me vote. I just signed up today. Very nice of you. I'm here today. I'm an up-county voter. My voting address is Dickerson, Maryland. I also am an early voter center volunteer. I volunteer at the Germantown Kingsview Center. We have only one site in Germantown to vote. It's one of the most populated areas. We also have expected explosion coming in Clarksburg. I think it's short-sighted to put another early voting center in the Silver Spring district in that area when we have 1 to 0 up county. So I am here to say I think that we need to do something better to reference and take care of our up county. Then now today we have two choices. It seems Nancy Dasik and White Oak. Nancy Dasik is a little bit closer for us up county, but we really need to plan ahead and consider the North up county area. Thank you.
Thank you, Sharon.
Next we have Diana Conway.
Welcome, Diana. Thank you. Again?
My name is Diana Conway. For the record, I live in Potomac, Maryland. I'm here on behalf of the Women's Democratic Club of Montgomery County as their president. I also got to know Ray and Nancy Dasik through my early activism. Nancy was a mentor to me, and I was very proud to be part of the push that not only got built but also got named after her, the Nancy Dasik Center. I think that access to the ballot is agreed as a nonpartisan idea. It's an American ideal. It has been expanded over time, and this is another such time. I'm not interested in casting aspersions, and I believe that we all cherish our democracy in equal measure. I urge you now to show a generous spirit and extend a meaningful opportunity to participate in our uniquely prized democracy. This decision should be driven by the evidence. The evidence I've seen remains unrebutted. It is that the worst lines were by far in the areas around the White Oak communities. The result was that the effective denial of access to the ballot for a distressing number of eligible, motivated voters. And a word on funding, my feeling is that it is not the job of this body to worry about the funding. Funding, you have been told, is available. The elected officials charged with funding our government and our elections are telling you the money is there. The State Board has charged you with identifying a new location. I urge you, in the strongest terms possible, to use this process to make a statement that we value equally all our voters and that we take seriously the challenges to the right to vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Diane.
Next we have Tiara Bradford.
Okay. Welcome, Tiara.
Hello, my name is, thank you, members of the board. My name is Tara Bradford. I'm policy manager with Common Cause Maryland. And I just want to echo the voices of the community who are in support of adding an early voting district to, early voting site to the White Oak area. And we're also not in support of limiting the students who can participate in the Future Vote program to by citizenship. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next we have Patricia Finati.
Welcome, Pat.
Thank you. My name is Pat Finati. I'm a citizen of Montgomery County for 47 years. I've lived in Damascus all that time. You know, not everybody in that county is rich. I don't know if you realize that. Many people who live like in Damascus, we just got 89 new low-cost housing places. We have many people there on Section 8 housing. And the Damascus site happens to be within walking distance. It's a long walk, 2 miles, but they could still get there if they had to walk. In addition, we're putting more low-cost housing in for seniors in Damascus. So we're building up. And I'm not here to fight for Damascus, but I'm here to fight for Up County because the same thing's happening all over the Up County. Clarksburg has over 40,000 people, which is only 4 miles from Damascus. I wouldn't mind if we moved it to Clarksburg, if we could do that. That might be something more useful, but you guys haven't been able to find a place in Clarksburg. So we need that. We need to keep that place in Damascus. But they're only 4 miles from Damascus, and they have planning altogether to have over 40,000 people there, and there's a lot of moderate housing there and some low-cost housing. So it's not everybody up county isn't rich. And I stand outside the polls because I know how important it is to the people who come there to be able to vote up county. But that's just us. There's this whole other area of the county that we have nobody there. And trust me, there are poor people out there that don't have cars and don't have easy access to ride down to Germantown, which is a long distance. So I think that Nancy Dasik is a good compromise. It's getting closer to people up there, and we need to get more voting in more areas. If we're going to do that, we can't do everything in one area. And I want to say something about this map, about the waiting times. I did a little bit of research on this. Damascus, in my particular precinct, on election day, we have almost nobody waits. You just go in and you vote. And I started looking at the different precincts that you have here. And the ones that have the longest waits have maybe 5,000 people. We have 2,000 in Damascus, in Baker, 1202. If you have this many people there, no wonder you have long waits. Make smaller precincts. Make more ways for people to vote on election day, so that they wouldn't have so long to wait. And everybody can get to polls near them on election day if they want to go. But I understand it's difficult for some people. I'm not saying everybody can do that, but I mean it's within very close to their homes on election day. So I think we should really consider finding why we have 5,000 people in one precinct and start dividing those precincts up. Thank you.
Oh, sorry. Next we have Josephine Wang.
Welcome, Josephine.
I have a lot of friends here. I didn't sign up, but thank you for allowing me to speak. I wanted to tell you that I'm a MIC. You know what MIC stands for? MIC, Made in China, so please don't forget. Made in China. I've been living in the country for 52 years. I beat some of you. My students, Diana back there, but Congress. So anyway, 我说中文你不会听. If I spoke Chinese, you wouldn't understand. So I'm here to advocate the opening of Nancy Dasik's early voting center, because I've worked on Nancy Dasik's campaign. I've known her when she was running. I've worked on Gene Ross's campaign. All these people have gone and died, and I'm still here. I'm going to fight. So I would like to see that Nancy Dasik's center to be the early voting center, because it served a lot of Asian population, because the fact that last time I was here, and I feel that the board didn't really respect the decision led by Jim Shalley. So all it is that respect, but then there's an appeal. So we'll work back here again. So we're wasting a lot of time. So the Asian population would say, well, they decided. So then, in other words, I feel like I'm by myself. There isn't. There's a silent majority. They're not going to speak. If they spoke Chinese, you wouldn't understand it. However, when they're voting ballots, there are multiple, languages. Why do that? I mean, if they understand, they would vote in English. Why would you? But then there are a lot of reasons. That's not another topic. So basically, I'm not going to waste your time. I'm here to say that also another point is population does not equal citizenship. Just because you've densely populated a certain area, you're not citizens yet. And yet you're ignoring the up-county, Damascus and Clarksburg area. There are a lot of citizens. They're not. You're not addressing their needs. So what I'm saying, don't think that population density is the only way to represent. Geographically, that will be more fair, more equitable. So again, my point being, thank you, Marcus, which he presented a map. I would like to have the board, thank you for letting me speak, to vote yes if you're going to go to the 12 early voting. Nancy Dasik Community Center. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
谢谢大家.
Thank you, Joseph.
Mr. Board President, we don't have anyone else who's identified to address the board.
I'm sorry?
There is no one else who's identified to address the board.
Does anybody want to address the board? Anybody? Yes. Anybody made the effort to come? You certainly want to
get around.
Okay.
I'm Sylvia Darrow. I've lived in Montgomery County in the same house for 52 years.
So I've seen some changes in the county as well. When I was listening to all of the people speaking, I did a little bit of work on these two sheets. And it was very interesting to me to see that Legislative District 15, which comes down from Monocacy to the tennis courts off of Democracy, has 3 voting places. So that's a large part of the county. District 6, Legislative 19 and 20 and 17 and 18, they all have 5 and 14, which is mostly the Silver Spring, a lot of that. 19 and 20, and 20 has 3, and that's the Tacoma Park area in Silver Spring. So I'm seeing that we have already a weighted part of the county, which I understand, and I know the geographics, and I taught at White Oak Middle School, love the school, love the dynamics, but that was like 30, 40 years ago. But I think now with the growth, and I was lost getting here because I didn't take Quinn's Orchard. So I thought, oh, I'll just come down Diamond and through. And as I did, I saw all kinds of brand new townhouses. And those would be around the Nancy Daisy. I came up through Deer Park. I came through Gaithersburg to get here. I live in Potomac. In fact, I talked very strongly a while back to get the Potomac Community Center, which we do now have. So it's time to look at where your population is going. And you're saying that the same reasons for your district in White Oak, which is very laudable, is also the same reasons that young people and those kinds of economic groups and the young just getting started are moving into Clarksburg and Germantown. Therefore, we need to see Nancy Dasik. Thank you.
Thank you, Susan. Yes, come on. Welcome. Just tell us your name.
Hi. Thank you for allowing me to speak. I'm Jasmine Morel, and I live in Kensington, Maryland. I'm also the vice president of the Latino Democratic Club, and I want to strongly urge you to make White Oak the sole early voting site on behalf of my community, and a lot of the reasons that Mr. Corona shared that are also very applicable and continuing to be the gold standard for the state. And also regarding future vote, I strongly resonate with the testimony given. And I came to this country when I was 14. My family waited to become a resident for 7 years, and then it takes 5 years once you're a U.S. permanent resident to become a citizen. I actually became a citizen 12 years ago. So my daughters are born here, and it took me a long time to figure out how the system worked, and I am really happy to hear Future Vote exists. So it is absurd to me to exclude the kids who need it most, because my parents didn't know how the system worked. So those kids are the ones who need that civic education now, and they are Montgomery County Public School students. So the system, the program seems to be working, so why change it? That to me seems very short-sighted. So I just really wanted to urge you both to do the right thing on those two issues. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Anybody else? Okay. So we've moved up this item for discussion. Yeah, let me just make some preliminary remarks. First of all, I want to thank everybody. Everybody's argument is legitimate and makes sense and is meritorious. Everybody here has different viewpoints, but everybody's view is just as important and meaningful as the other person. I just want to ask our council a few things first. At the last meeting, our board voted 3-2 not to have a 12th early voting site. And under the state rules and regulations, the State Board of Elections called an emergency meeting, which they oversee us, and they voted 4-1 to order us to provide them information for a 12th early voting site. They basically overruled us. Is that correct?
Yes, they directed that the Montgomery County Board of Elections is to identify and provide information on 12th early voting center. Yes.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong, the State Board of Elections has 5 members, 3 Republicans and 2 Democrats.
Correct.
However, I've learned for a while, but a lot of people learned recently that to pass something in the State Board, they need 4 votes.
Correct. The State Board operates under a supermajority for all actions, so you need to have 4 votes for any action at the State Board level.
And that's required by state law?
That's required by state law, yes.
Okay.
So the State Board operates differently than all of the local boards because it requires a supermajority on any action, yes.
Okay. Now, at that same meeting, one of the members of the State Board requested of the Assistant Attorney General for the state of Maryland, who represents the State Board of Elections, for the Attorney General's opinion on the process for selecting a 12th or any early voting site. And we printed out the colloquy. But would you explain to the board and all the members here, what is the position of the State Board when, well, correct me if I'm wrong, my recollection is that the Attorney General has opined that to select an early voting site, the State Board, in collaboration with the local board and the county government, 3 prongs, State Board, us, and the county government, in collaboration, will work together to present a site for approval. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Now, obviously, there was a disagreement amongst our board, and I think there would be a disagreement today, which I'll get into in a minute, about which site. What is the Attorney General's opinion as to what happens if the county board, by majority vote, and the county government, Mark Elrich, the county council, can't agree?
So the Attorney General's opinion, the Assistant Attorney General's opinion, who represents the State Board, says that the statute provides that the State Board must collaborate with the local board, and that collaboration would be to meet all the requirements. In other words, it be ADA compliant, it meet all the requirements in terms of being adequate heating and air conditioning, have adequate space, do all of those things. However, their opinion of the Assistant Attorney General for the State Board is that when the county and the State Board, the local board, do not agree, that in essence the State Board and the county, the governing body, have to reach an agreement in order to locate a 12th site.
So if our board by majority vote doesn't agree with the Montgomery County government, then basically we're off the table. The decision on the 12th early voting site is between the state in collaboration with the county government?
That is the opinion of the state. That's correct.
I mean, and I'm sure other members will discuss how they feel. I mean, I've spoken to Naheed and Diane separately, because we're not allowed to meet more than 2 of us. And I've spoken to Diane and Naheed, and it's our view in discussing with members of the public. And I just want to stand up for a second. And I know one of the other minority will want to speak to another site. Talking to Diane and Naheed, it's our view, this is the Nancy Dasik Center, right here. And it's our view that it services this whole section of the county where there's no early voting. In addition, the Potomac Community Center, which Sylvia Darrow led the effort to get, was, I think, the second most popular early voting site in one of our elections. But the parking at the Potomac Community Center is very bad. And we've had a lot of complaints and issues about parking. I think even Diana Conway has raised that with me.
That what?
The parking at Potomac.
Yeah, it's a problem.
So,
but so are the lines at other places.
No, I understand. I'm just saying, we believe, and you know, the majority of the board believes that Nancy Dasik would be a better location because of the service to this unserved area and to alleviate the issues of parking at Potomac. In addition to that, and I'm speaking for Naheed and Diane, who I've spoken to, but if I'm misstating, that this is the proposed White Oak site. However, it's surrounded by Silver Spring, Wheaton, Mid-County, and Prasen. There are 4 early voting sites out of the 11 we presently have. So it's our view, the majority, that Nancy Dasik would be more appropriate. We didn't want a 12th early voting site to begin with, but if we're forced to recommend, the majority would vote for Nancy Dasik. However, listening to everybody, and I've spoken to David separately, I know David will speak to this, or Elise or Alan, that, and the county government, Mark Elrich, he sent us a letter today, Mark Elrich, the county government, all of the state delegates, all of the state senators, all of the U.S. congressmen, and all of the U.S. senators, the entire elected representation of the state of Maryland that affects us, all, the entire government that we live under supports White Oak. Accordingly, I mean, it's clear to me that the county government and a majority of the county board would not agree. So accordingly, I'm trying to do what I think is right, and I would defer to my colleagues. What I would propose, because the way the Attorney General has opined, they've cut us out. My proposal is to send to the state board, knowing the situation here, I would propose to send to the state board, since they basically overruled us about not having a site, I would propose sending to the state board both the Nancy Dasik Center and White Oak, and let them, who've overruled us, and they said that we're out of the loop because we can't agree with the county government, I would send both up so that we then, all of us, become advocates. I certainly would advocate in front of the state board for Nancy Dasik, and I know others would not. They would support White Oak. But I would send up both in fairness to all the residents of our county, and let the state board, which they have the authority per the Attorney General, to make the final decision, and we become advocates for what we believe in.
I will second that motion.
Yeah.
And have a chance to.
Thank you.
And I wanted to make a comment.
Well, David, you second that?
I do.
Well, I appreciate that.
Would it be okay if I were to speak now?
Sure.
Okay. First of all, I want to thank you, Jim, for the significant effort required to try and find whatever common ground exists among our board members, all of whom get along with each other, but many of whom do not necessarily see things the same way. But I very much appreciate your effort not to merely have a partisan party line vote.
Let me just jump in.
Yeah.
One thing I want to say, it's also my opinion, I want to be candid to everybody here, that if we voted 3-2 today, 3-2 for Nancy Dasik, I don't believe that the state board would get a supermajority in favor of a 3-2 vote. They won't do it, in my opinion. That's another practical.
And you've raised a very interesting practical problem, which is that our board does not have a supermajority requirement, but the final decision is made by a board that does. And so that puts us in a bit of a balancing act between, I could try as best I could to convince all of you to my point of view and to our point of view and the point of view of many of the people you heard today. But that doesn't necessarily mean that we would be successful, and you have the same issue at the state level. So I think actually that sending both White Oak and North Potomac to the state board as an option for them to consider is a fair solution. I do have a few things I wanted to say about that. First of all, I would like to read the letter that we received today from the county executive and 8 members of the county council concerning this subject. Dear Chair Shalik and members of the board, after following the discussion at the September 16 County Board of Elections meeting, as well as the October 8 Maryland State Board of Elections meetings, we are writing this joint letter to clarify our position. We strongly urge the Montgomery County Board of Elections to recommend adding a 12th early voting site for the 2020 primary and general election in White Oak. We commit to funding of this site for the 2020 primary and general elections. Having closer and more convenient early voting centers, as well as early voting centers that are sited on major transit corridors like US 29, is especially important in areas with low car ownership and high transit dependency like East County, where around 35% of adults do not own a car despite limited transit availability in that area. That's why we believe that the White Oak Recreation Center, which is more convenient to East County voters than the Burtonsville or Silver Spring early voting sites, should be designated as the county's 12th early voting site for the upcoming general election. Having early voting at White Oak will relieve pressure and reduce the long lines at nearby polling places on election day. Voting is our precious and hard-won right and responsibility as Americans. We hope the Montgomery County Board of Elections would collaborate with us to make it as easy as possible for these voters to access early voting. Sincerely, Mark Elridge, County Executive, Nancy Navarro, Council President, Sidney Katz, Council Vice President, Gabe Albornoz, Council Member at Large, Evan Glass, Council Member at Large, Will Jawando, Council Member at Large, Hans Reamer, Council Member at Large, Craig Rice, Council Member District 2, Tom Hucker, Council Member District 5. And there's a copy to the State Board.
Let me just jump in. See, that letter, clear to me that the county board, us, and the county government cannot agree. Therefore, the Attorney General says that the decision now is between the State Board and the county government. Is that correct?
It certainly is as to a 12th early voting site, and this board voted unanimously as to the 11th. The debate has been on the 12th.
But from that letter, it's clear that the majority of this board doesn't agree with the county government. And the Attorney General says the decision now goes to the State Board in collaboration with the county government only.
Correct. I'm just going to finish my thoughts here. I want to direct everyone's attention. It's in the handout that I had to this map over here, which was produced by our staff in January in response to our concerns about wait times at precincts during the 2018 general election. And you'll see that the key to the map here is that the lightest areas, this is the peak wait time during election day. In other words, at the worst time on election day, what was the wait? And the lightest areas have waits of less than 15 minutes. The next lightest area has waits of 20 to 30 minutes. Then you have the darker area that has 35 to 55 minutes. And then you have the darkest areas that are almost brown that are greater than 60 minutes, meaning that they have a peak waiting time of greater than 60 minutes. The national standard is that we don't want any voter to have to wait more than 30 minutes in order to vote. Our county has 3/4 of the precincts are in one of these two categories. In other words, 3/4 of the precincts do not have waits of more than 30 minutes. But 1/4 of the precincts, those precincts do have waits of more than 30 minutes. And let's look at where they are. Okay, this is the Route 29 corridor over here. And you will notice that on the east side of Route 29, almost every precinct here is in the greater than 30 minutes category, including 2 of them on the east and 1 of them on the west that is in the greater than 60 minutes category. So we have a significant problem along the Route 29 corridor with election day wait times. Now I want you to look at this big light area over here. This area over here is Potomac and North Potomac. Right where I'm pointing right now, that is the Potomac Community Center, where we added an early voting site 4 years ago. Where I'm pointing here is the Nancy Dasik Community Center, a beautiful facility. For those of you who haven't been there, you definitely should go see it. But it's definitely in an area where at least election day wait times in the 2018 general election was not an issue. We have an opportunity and an obligation. Our opportunity is we can address what's happening over here with an additional early voting site. Our obligation is that none of our voters should be waiting more than 30 minutes in order to vote. And we're going to be doing a number of things, and our staff is going to be doing a number of things to try and address wait time. This is one of the things that we could do. But that, I know some people have asked, why White Oak? That is why White Oak, because that quarter of Election Day times, and I had the opportunity myself, I was sent by the board on Election Day of 2018. We have a meeting at lunchtime on Election Day where we kind of compare notes, and we saw that there were huge problems at the Praisner Center, and I spent 8 hours from 2 until 10 on Election Day and Election Night at the Praisner Center, and if you arrived to vote at 8 p.m., on election night at the Praisner Center, you didn't leave until 10 o'clock at night. So, in my opinion, this is an opportunity for us to make it easier for those voters. Let me make another point that I made to the State Board. I live not far from the intersection of Montrose Road and 270. I can get to 2 early voting sites, both Potomac and the Executive Office Building, in less than 10 minutes. Where Elise lives in White Oak, she has 0 early voting sites that are within 10 minutes of her house. And yes, as the crow flies, there are a number of early voting sites that are not far from White Oak, but you can't fly there. If you are using public transportation, particularly on the weekend, that becomes much, much harder. I'm disappointed that we can't agree on White Oak as our solution. And I will point out that, as Gracie said in her testimony today, as Marianne Keefe, who I spoke with over the weekend, and by the way, it's her birthday today. Happy birthday, Marianne. Both of them pointed out to me that both of them, I was a substitute member back when the Damascus early voting site was added, so I had the luxury of not voting on that particular matter, although I was supportive. But both Marianne and Gracie took a fair amount of heat from Democratic Party people because they voted to add Damascus as an early voting site. I would also add that when we added Sandy Spring, which was more recently than that, that was a unanimous vote of the board and was actually supported by both the Democratic Party and the Republican Party. And Sandy Spring was not necessarily a Democratic territory. So I am disappointed that we cannot agree that White Oak objectively is the choice, but I very much appreciate the fact that Jim Shalek, in trying to balance his views and the views of some of my colleagues, the majority of the board, and the views of elected officials in Montgomery County, including the county executive and at least 8 members of the county council, along with the minority of the board. It's a very difficult thing to try and balance those 2 things, and I think you came up with a solution that does that. I will happily spend Halloween at the state board, as I imagine you will as well, Jim. And I'm happy to make that case.
Thank you, Dave.
First of all, when we choose a side, we don't choose because Democrat has more majority, Republican. We choose a side to serve the people of that area, not because the Democrat are there or Republican are there. Second, when you talk about long wait for prisoners, you fail to mention they were there because they thought on election day, since they voted on early election in that place, election day, they can vote there. That's why, since that was not their precinct, it was a long line because they had to do provisional. So
that was 250 people.
In order to do provisional, so they had to be prepared, manpower, and all of that. So this is regarding that long line. Long line was everywhere. I was covering AOB. We had a line all over the street and go and go. We have other means of voting. They can do no excuse absentee votes if they don't want to wait. We have 8 days of early voting. They can vote anywhere in the state. So it's not just the last minute people go, so it's nobody's fault. We have to serve the whole county, not just one area. So those people in Darmstadt area, they have to write. They work, they rush home to get their children from the babysitter or whatever. They want to do the civic duty. They want to go. We have to make it possible for them to vote too. So by living far away, that is not a crime. By having a car is not a crime.
Not at all.
So, but Nancy Dasik will serve Route 28 all the way down Sun and all the way the area which they have farmers there. So a good portion of Gatesburg, western part of Gatesburg, and Seneca and all those areas, they would serve those people. And it would ease the traffic and parking in Potomac Community Center. Because we had the presentation with people from downtown area, they voted in Potomac Community Center. That would release that traffic and that long line at Potomac Community Center. That's my point.
Let me just say one thing, Alan. In terms of the lines at Burkensville, which we all were distressed about, I want to give credit to Councilman Hucker, who led the fight to get us an extra, it was $125,000. We have more scanners and more personnel that Margaret's going to deploy to that particularly that area that had long lines. So I want to thank Councilman Hucker. But the bottom line is, I mean, I don't think the state board is going to have a majority vote. That means they need both parties, somebody from both parties, to vote for a 3-2 vote out of this board. It's not going to happen, in my view.
Or 2-3.
Yeah, in other words, the state board and the attorney general basically have they take over the process now because we can't agree with the county government. I think this is a practical solution. And we'll see each other at Halloween. Alan.
I want to deal with the geography issue. First off, I appreciate very much what you're doing, and I agree with David's point of view. But let's turn to the statute to figure out what our obligations are. Section 10-301.1 E tells us that we figure out the early voting sites. We look at the section on designated polling places for local boards. Section 10-101A2 says, among other things, that each polling place shall be located as conveniently as possible for the majority of registered voters. The majority of registered voters assigned to that polling place. It doesn't say about residents. It doesn't say about citizens. It says registered voters. Comar, Comar says, this is from the State Board regulation, in the case of a county such as ours, 80% of the registered voters should live within 5 miles of one of the early voting centers. So the point is, we're not obligated to look to the distance, to the geography per se. We look to where the majority of people are, and you want to make sure that you serve the majority of people with your early voting sites. The Comar section is it's 33.17.02.02, just for the record.
Any other comments?
Yeah, I want to, before we have to vote on this, I want to make it absolutely clear when this goes to the state board that it was a majority vote in this, that number one, this group, still by majority vote, believes because of the dire financial situation that's managed by the county council, we can't afford another site. We're already looking at exorbitant costs. And the way to reduce long wait lines is to add more machines, add more personnel in the existing sites. That reduces wait lines. In order to dedicate another freestanding site when property taxes are going up was a discussion I'm not going to belabor everybody on hearing over again. We went over this in the last meeting. But this board first voted no 12th voting site. And with council here, I want to correct me if I'm wrong, I want to make clear that the Assistant Attorney General's letter does not say the county council has more weight than the local board. That's not in the opinion. The state board, no, it doesn't. the state board has met, the state board takes into consideration the view of the local board. The Attorney General's opinion says that they collaborate together.
Kevin, you want to clarify that? I thought it was...
Well, there are two issues here. One has to do with the 11 sites that are required by law. Okay, and then the 12th site, the language actually says that the state board has to collaborate with the local board regarding all the things that we talked about.
It actually says that collaborate with the state board.
Would you please let counsel just talk so I can hear him uninterrupted?
Let's quote the statute.
But the upshot of it is that, in essence, for the 12th site, the county governing body and the state board have to agree on the 12th site.
Not us. Not us.
Correct.
They have to collaborate. The state board has to collaborate with us as it talk to us, as
Correct.
it work with us.
Right.
But they don't necessarily have to agree with us. And our agreement is not a requirement for the state board and the county governing
and
body
you're actually taking
to
my
agree.
time because I was in the middle of comments.
Please go ahead.
Asked Kevin
Please go ahead.
to answer, and then you
go
kind
ahead.
of come
Go
here. So I wanted to first make those points. Secondly, I want to make sure, before I vote on anything, that any recommendation sent to the state board clearly states the majority vote in this board is for DASIC.
We haven't had a majority vote on
David,
DASIC.
could I please finish my comments? Thank you. I
have a
didn't
majority
interrupt
vote
you
for DASIC.
ever.
No, we don't.
I put in my comments.
Okay, I'll move.
No, I'm sorry. Go ahead, finish, Diane.
So go ahead, Diane.
I want the record to reflect that the majority vote of this board, as compelled by the state or requested by the state to give them a recommendation, is for Nancy Dasick.
I object.
No, in my
You already voted.
in my remarks, I said that if we had a vote, I spoke to both of you, it would be 3-2. But we're voting on the motion that David seconded to send up both sites. But in my remarks, I said it's 3-2. But that's not a motion.
Thank you. Those were my
For
comments.
I think the motion is to put forward both
Yes.
White Oak and the Nancy Dasick Center as possible 12th site if one is to be selected.
In the reverse order.
And then, in that,
It was whatever Jim said.
well,
We
whatever
can
it was.
say, you know, we can-
Those two sites, and then the board members are certainly free, as the public is, to go to the state board meeting on Halloween. They've moved it up. It's not their normal time. They're having it earlier in the day, so you want to check their website. But to go ahead and state your views, and then the state board will ultimately make a decision.
But
What I would
Diane's
suggest-
question is
what
that, hold on. Diane's question is that the majority of the board, we want DASIC. Shouldn't we make that
It's
clear?
in the,
to
it's
the
clear.
state board?
Why don't we, let's transcribe this, the dialogue.
But you all are not taking a formal vote
No.
on
Right.
that.
My comments were, before I vote on anything, I would like to make clear that I would like to have the record reflect
Are
the
you
majority
proposing an
vote and the
amendment?
minority vote. And David, please stop talking when I'm in the middle of a sentence. Please.
And that we
Are you done?
want the 11. We didn't want the 12.
Mr. President, could staff have clarification on the motion?
Yeah, the motion is to
I
send
have
to
the
the state board
Can you read it for us?
Yeah.
Nancy Dasick and
So
White Oak.
propose that, propose that Nancy Dasick and White Oak be the possible early voting sites to be sent to the State Board of Election, and they can decide to make the final decision.
Yeah, no, they are
And
not
there
being.
and was there a second to that?
Yes,
No,
David.
they-
Second.
I
David.
no,
Okay.
object.
Waiting to be called.
Wait, you want to finish? You finish.
Yeah, my objection is, I don't believe these two sites are being sent to the board with equal weight. And I would like that to be reflected in the motion, or I'm not voting.
David.
Jim's motion very clearly does not put a weight on either site.
We didn't vote.
I would not have seconded it if he had established a preference for a different site. Jim's motion was to send both. If the majority of the board wants to say that a majority of the board supports a particular site, which, by the way, you haven't proposed before today. So it's not like we voted on it last month. So if the majority of the board wants to say that, we will vote against it. You guys can say that it's a majority if that's what you want to say. But I certainly would not have seconded a motion that was going to say that the site that I suggested, fought for, went to the state board for, etc., was going to be, was going to be listed as a second choice. And I will object to any effort to suggest a preference without an action of the board. Because one board member, even by having conversations, I could say that a majority of the board feels a certain way too.
Except I'm counting votes.
You're counting
I'm not
votes,
being
but you're not
subjective.
voting. If you want to say that the board,
Which
majority of the board
I
has
propose.
an opinion, I don't disagree.
David,
I don't
you jumped in and you seconded the motion before we could have any discussion.
No,
so that's why we are where
I
we
seconded
are.
the motion as it was stated. I seconded the motion as it was stated. That's generally how it works.
I mean, I think my remarks were clear that if we took a vote, it would be 3-2 for you.
I think we do
All
that.
right, I'm going to make
So there's a motion on the floor.
There's a motion on the
That's
floor.
the motion. We've got the motion.
Motion,
There's a second.
But she can move to amend it if she
You
wants.
need a motion.
What?
He seconded
Yeah,
it.
he seconded it. Okay, go
That's,
ahead
and
and
she
get
just
the vote.
read it, so we have to deal with that, ladies and
Take the
gentlemen.
vote.
I call the
Let's deal
question.
with that and then.
You can amend the motion.
I
Get the vote
called
in your
Jim's motion.
motion.
I call the question.
Get the vote in your motion.
Can they amend it now?
Well, you can amend the motion if you want to make an amended motion, but I assume all of you are going to go to the state board and make your views known. So,
But, I don't care.
So-
We can all go and talk. I would like the record to reflect the reality of the board action. And I think that this thing ran away before, I had my hand up before David jumped in and seconded, and I was ignored. So, I have as much right to be heard as anybody
Okay,
else.
so go ahead.
So I'm saying, I want us to have the record reflect when we send a proposal to the state, which they asked us to send a recommendation, we recommend by 3 votes, Nancy Dasick, by 2 votes, White Oak, to reflect the reality of the vote of this board.
That is not the reality of the vote of this board. The board has not had a vote.
And I suggest we
Jim
do
has
that.
given his views as to what the votes on the board would be if we had a vote. I don't disagree with his assessment of the situation. That's why I seconded the motion. But it is not true that the reflection of the reality of the vote on the board is anything other than we have not taken a vote. So if you want to say that that's your view, propose an amendment.
Well, I think my remarks were very clear, that if we took a vote after talking to Naheed and Diane, that it would be 3-2. But the vote is to send both up.
But they're not going to read your remarks. They're
Well,
going to read
well,
the
they can
they're
also-
going to look at the recommendation. I want
But we're all
it
going to
in-
be there. I'm going to be there telling them we would have been 3-2.
Why can't we clarify the record?
Make an amendment.
Are we going to put in there that we voted?
there's a motion on the
not to have
table.
one?
Is there an amendment to that motion? That's where we are.
Okay, I
We
propose
are.
we amend the motion to reflect board preference for the 2 sites we are sending as recommendations.
I understand it.
So what's the preference?
Okay, then
You have to say the preference.
My preference is that we state 3 voting board members vote for Dasick, 2 voting board members vote for White Oak. There's nothing controversial about that. Prefer. Okay, 3 voting members prefer Dasick, 2 voting members prefer white flesh. I will not vote to equally send these 2 recommendations to the state. I just went off the motion. Sorry. My amendment is the motion includes the information that 3 of the voting board members forward the DASIC Center, 2 of the voting board members forward the White Oak Center.
Is that sentences to be appended to the end of the motion? Is that how the motion is to be amended?
The amended motion is, as I understand it, that a majority of the board is that the board is putting forward Nancy Dasik and White Oak, and a majority of the board's preference would be the Nancy Dasik Center. That's the amended motion.
Right, but you did the majority first. The majority is A. The minority is.
Well, no, because you all said that, but you haven't voted on that.
Yeah, that's preference. Did I say? You said forward. Okay, you have to say preference. Oh, favor. Yeah, but you see, when you just said it.
Kevin's statement is the amendment. What Kevin said will be the amendment.
Okay, but
so the majority of the board prefer for Nancy Dasik.
Oh, right. Okay. And minority prefer White Oak.
No, that's good enough.
But he's saying that may not be needed.
Wait, the majority prefer Dasik. Okay, got it.
Okay. We have to vote.
I wrote down the board is putting forward Nancy Dasik and White Oak. Majority of the board's preference would be the Nancy Dasik Center.
Right.
That's what
I said. Do we have to vote, Kevin?
Sure you can.
You need to vote on the amendment.
The motion?
I second the motion.
Is there any discussion on the amended motion?
Okay.
What's the exact wording? You want to read it back, Allison?
The motion would be for the board to put forward the Nancy Dasik Center and White Oak.
No, that's not the
To send
amendment to the motion is that 3 of the voting members prefer DASIC.
No.
And second voting.
The amendment is the majority of the board prefer for Nancy Dasik. Is their preference for Nancy Dasik?
Majority of the board's preference would be the Nancy Dasik Center.
Right. That's the amendment.
I have a question. Is it your desire to only talk about what the majority of the board wants, or is it your desire to let the state board know that 3 are on one side and 2 are on the other?
Yeah. The motion clearly states that.
No, it doesn't.
Well,
the motion right now, as she currently read it, and it's been stated different ways by different people. But my question is, are you suggesting only to say that a majority of the board supports the DASIC Center, or do you propose to say the way Margaret said it, and that I think you originally said it, which was that 3 voting members of the board support the DASIC Center and 2 voting members of the board support White Oak? If it's the latter, then we're not on our side against providing information to the state board about what the facts are. But if you're going to ask us to vote for a statement that says that a majority of the board supports a site that we don't support, that's different.
So you just want to add your side to the 2 minorities?
That was the original.
Okay. Here's what I would suggest.
Isn't 3 the majority? What are you arguing over?
The language.
I'm arguing over the wording of what's going to be said to the state board. That's what I'm arguing over. Here's what I propose as something that might help all of us. If Diane's amendment were to be that 3 voting members plus 1 substitute member support the DASIC Center, while 2 voting members plus 1 substitute member support the White Oak Center.
Well, that's the intent of what you're saying, isn't it?
Isn't that accurate? Yeah.
That's the intent.
That's what you said.
That's what you said.
That's what she did say originally.
The substitutes, but I'm adding the substitutes.
I don't think it matters at this point.
Yeah.
So do you accept the amendment?
I think David's is more clear. That
You
4 of
accept
us want DASIC, and the 3
Diane, do you accept the verbiage to your amendment?
Technically, that's
Just go 3 and 2.
Well, if she's already made an amendment and it was already seconded, then you're,
she doesn't have an opportunity, once it's moved and seconded, to decide what happens. That's up to the
Diane, that's
well then.
Then 4 plus 1.
Robert's rules does not allow for that.
We'll go with that.
You go with
It's
the,
okay. We'll go with the 4 and the 3.
Do we want to
So
amend the
she's
motion again?
accepting, let me, just for my clarification, on the record, is Diane accepting David Naaman's amendment to her motion that includes the substitutes?
No, David's not amending my motion. I don't think.
Just clarifying.
Wasn't clarifying.
Let's try it this way. Let's try it this way. How about if I'll just ask for unanimous consent that the motion, that the amendment to the motion shall read. I'm asking unanimous consent. The amendment to the motion shall read that 3 voting members and 1 substitute member support the Dasik Center, and 2 voting members and 1 substitute member support the White House Center.
Yes. Okay, so then let me restate my amended motion. So
I was just proposing a unanimous consent request that.
David.
Yeah.
Let me just
You are now.
restate the motion. Is that possible? The amendment to the motion. We're trying to clarify.
I have something totally different.
We're trying to
David was trying to
clarify.
get consensus on, is that language acceptable to the board to vote on? That that's what's going to be
Correct.
included?
Thank you.
Correct.
And then I restate it.
Kevin, no, you don't restate it. It's
Well, the problem is we continue to restate it and then we restate it in a different way. So
Exactly.
that becomes our problem here. So
Yeah.
Lisa, please, both of you are writing it down.
Okay, so the
What
amendment.
exactly is the language?
The amendment to the original motion says that 3 voting members plus a substitute support the Nancy Dasik Center, and 2 voting members and 1 substitute support White Oak.
Okay, now, is there a consensus that that language is acceptable to the board?
Diane,
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Yes. How are the second?
Yes, that was seconded.
I
So
don't
now,
want to drive everybody crazy, but can you read, what's the whole package?
all right. So the original motion by Jim Shalik is to send to the State Board of Elections the Nancy Dasik and White Oak as a possible polling places that the State Board can decide and make the final decision on. The amended motion to that is that 3 voting members plus 1 substitute support the Nancy Dasik, and 2 voting members plus 1 substitute support the White Oak.
Yeah.
Yeah, all right, then that's second. Which one do we vote?
The amendment.
Vote on the amendment.
Vote on the amendment first.
All those in favor of the amendment say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? It's unanimous. Now we have to vote on the amendment?
Yes.
On the motion. On the motion.
Amended motion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed?
Diane, what was that? Aye.
To add the language.
Add the language.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd like to know, do we want to reiterate in this letter that we send them, that we originally voted not to have a 12th?
Yes.
Yeah, we can, I mean-
That's got to be the first thing. That was the
I
beginning
think
of
they
my
know because they
comments.
voted it down.
You know what?
You will lose your unanimous vote if you do that. Just saying.
We're talking about the letter.
I understand you're talking about the letter. You just got to vote 5-0 on an issue that has been killing us all. And if you want to snatch defeat from the jaws of
David,
victory,
stop
go for it.
talking. Just stop talking.
You tell me to stop talking.
All right, we passed the motion.
Yes, an amendment.
Okay, we passed the motion.
Yeah, it's just
Okay, we passed the motion, so,
Mr. President,
yeah.
I do need to have an executive session today.
And topic?
FY22 budget.
Oh, yes.
22? Yeah.
21.
Okay,
FY21?
21.
FY21 budget.
okay. We're going to move up.
Before you move anything up, are we going to talk about the Wheaton site?
Yeah, we've already sent up the 11 sites, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
I am going to cover it
Wheaton?
in the future. Further.
Could you cover it while people are still here, please?
Okay. Wheaton, off the top of my head, is, Recreation has found funds to purchase a floor covering at the Wheaton Rec Center gym. So basically, what we are in the process of doing is to add, working with the recreation staff and our staff, Janet, Ross, and Chris Zizit, as to add some additional electrical outlets, mostly for the general election, not so much for the primary, as well as it's going to take about 6 hours. So there'll be about 6 hours pre-election, pre-early voting to put the floor covering down, and that'll be overtime that we'll have to absorb, and then 6 hours to bring the floor covering up. But we will have the gym. And that MOU will be developed, work with Kevin, working with the county attorney's office at some point in the future. And we will include, once we get the final potential bills on the electrical outlet, that will be included in the supplemental request.
Thank you. That's excellent news. And
Very good.
thank you to
Thank
everybody
you.
who worked on that. Excellent news.
Very nice.
I want to give a lot of credit to Chris. Chris has really been working the phone lines.
Thank you, Chris.
Thank you, Chris.
We have an agenda item, a future vote.
And I suggest, it's been suggested to me that I can talk with staff, particularly, Dr. Z, to discuss some of the details, and that we entertain any motions at the next board meeting.
I don't think time-wise.
No, there will be no time.
At the next
Future
board
vote,
meeting?
the future vote, the software module for election judge polling places for for the elections 2020, polling place, election judge, and future vote. That software module, we've held it up, and it needs to go tomorrow. We have to begin the process of testing all of the elements of the enhancements that we have made in all three of these programs, and our plan depends upon the fact that we begin the process of reaching out to the 3,000 to 3,500 individuals that we need as election judges, plus we need to update, hopefully we'll get like 99% of our polling places locked down, and we need to get all of that information included. So we're not capable, the system is not going to be able to wait. Now, we certainly can make some changes to the website.
Okay. Yes, we can make those updates to the website.
Okay, and for example, Margaret, when it doesn't, because I'm so unfamiliar with the system and I've been trying to get information for months about it, but I've done my own research and I've discovered things, but I still don't know what areas, when you talk about the software having to be finalized, are germane to the concerns I have. And one in particular that I think needs immediate attention is the fact that a student trying to register online can't complete the registration if they're not enrolled in a public school. And I was given assurance at the beginning of this that all students were allowed equal access to this program regardless of where they went to school. Now, is the software that you're talking about something that cannot make the system fair for everybody unless we do it before you're released tomorrow?
Under the current system, it is, go for it.
So basically, when a guardian applies through the Future Vote module, there are some fielding questions, and one of them states the type of school. So there is a drop down that says private, public, homeschool,
I
or
did
other.
not, is that in the last
It's-
2 weeks?
No, it's been there since the beginning, actually, because it starts with name of school, type of school. So let's say if there's a new school, for example, the Snowden, for example, well, Snowden Elementary School, we don't have elementary school students, but a couple years back we had Hallie Wells Middle School. And in that enhancement, we added Hallie Wells because when parents would apply, it would not appear in alphabetical order as under H, Hallie Wells. But what they did was you could add other and you could type in the name of the school. So even though there's a drop down, the guardian can type in that particular school, whether it be Georgetown Prep. The next fielding question is type of school. So there's private,
But how do you,
public.
Yeah, how do you get there? Because I did this a month ago.
So-
And I don't think I'm completely illiterate on the computer, but it was impossible to get anything other than the full list of public schools. I did not see other, I did not see home. I don't know where that drops down because I spent half an hour on this.
So is it fair to say that you opened a Future Vote account as a guardian?
It was registering as a
guardian. Okay. And then once you filled your information, your name, address, contact information, etc., the next screen is your child's information,
Yep, that was
name, etc. And then the next fielding questions is type of school, and there are drop down. Now,
and that's where it ended.
well, so once you select the type of school, so it could be a
But I
combination.
didn't see type. It did not have
It's
type.
there. It's there. It's literally that has not changed.
Janet, can you bring up the system?
I can try.
Here, I'll have it.
While we're trying to get that up, is there another question you would like to ask Roberto while he's sitting here?
How much flexibility is there in changing the website?
So the website is not what we see as user in the front is totally different than the complex architecture of the programming. And the three modules all intertwine with each other. And so they all run off correct me, Chris, if I'm wrong, they all run off the polling place list of precincts and or early voting centers. So if you change something on this side, it changes a lot of different aspects of both the polling place module, future vote module, and or the election judge module. So for me, my ignorance of programming, I always assumed that, well, why not? You could just add another school. But on the programming end, there's a lot of work hours in order to do that. What we're going to try with Margaret when we talked in the hallway is adding listing specific the names of parochial and the larger homeschools. Because we do work with the homeschools, there's different associations, and there's a lot of smaller ones that we can't necessarily capture all of them, but we do work with a lot of the larger ones. So we could definitely try to add those to the list, but there is a drop down and there is the option to select homeschool, private, public. It's there, and it's always been there from the beginning. But trust me, it's there because my son actually is a future voter, and I was in that sense when we moved to Clarksburg. Hallie Wells was not there, so I was able to type it in. But yes, but I agree.
And
we could type in private school.
Yeah, you can type in names for private
And
schools.
you also mentioned to me that in all the drop downs under the Future Vote program, it doesn't talk specifically about the enumerated duties of the students, and I would like to have those spelled out.
Okay, so that's
Because
an
my
FAQ.
concern, as I went on record saying a while ago, is I think the number one mission of the Board of Elections is to make sure that only United States citizens vote in our elections. And I don't like blurring the lines with auxiliary programs that aren't a function of the Board of Elections. If it's the Board of Education, fine. If it's social services, fine. But I think elections are a specific area that needs to be dedicated solely for protecting the integrity and the veracity of the vote. So, when we're opening it up to people who are non-citizens, I would like to make sure that we enumerate, i.e. contain the activities that we're inviting them to participate in. And some of those, I think, are not clear on the website, such as one of the student aides responsibilities is to secure the voting booth and the accuracy of the vote. I have a problem with that.
I think that is a fair complaint, and both Roberto and I, and we've talked to the board attorney, and they think it's a legitimate complaint. And because really and truly, it's the adults that are in charge.
And mind you also, every election cycle we do update the frequently asked questions. That's what you're talking about. And yes.
But if we don't do all this before release tomorrow,
Website is different from the
website's
module.
separate.
Okay,
We can
and
do that.
that's the one clarification I was looking for.
David?
I would like to move that no changes shall be made to the Future Vote program or its website without the prior approval of a majority vote of the Board of Elections.
Well, we can't do that, can we?
No. Well, we
The
can vote on
website.
it. We
The
can-
website or the program.
The website we can delay.
Seconded.
Mr. President, Mr.
Yeah.
Newman, the website, we can, we can bring different modules. I mean, we can present different types of languages to the board. The module is the one that I and the staff are mostly concerned about.
I did not mention the module.
I know. I'm just trying to clarify.
I mentioned
But we
the
can-
website.
We can definitely delay the website. Okay.
Let me make clear. I'm not asking to delay the website. I'm asking to delay any changes to the website. I'm saying that if there's a change to the website, it should be a decision by the entire board, not by any one member.
Yes.
That goes for any change to the program as well. But if there's a second to my motion, I'll be happy.
There is a second.
Okay.
Seconded.
May I speak to my motion? First of all, I'd like to say that while Diane and I have become friends, I disagree with just about everything she said about the Future Vote program. I do not consider it to be an ancillary program. And in fact, it has existed for 15 years. As you heard earlier, it was established when Nancy Dasick was the president of the board and Bob Ehrlich was the governor of Maryland. So it was established by a Republican majority board. It has been a bipartisan and nonpartisan fixture in Montgomery County for those 15 years. It is not fiscally conservative to oppose Future Vote because Future Vote has saved us lots of money over the years with the free help that we have gotten, it has been a tremendous success story, award-winning, etc. There is no inconsistency between having Future Vote open to all students and having security for the election and preventing non-citizens from voting. None of us want non-citizens to vote, and as our former colleague Gracie Rivera-Oven told us when she served on the board, most non-citizens don't want to vote because if they do, they will not become citizens. If they get caught, in fact, we had a situation that she brought to our attention where someone was essentially registered without their permission. We've had a number of instances, actually, not just with non-citizens, but with a number of people who went to the Motor Vehicle Administration and their voter registration was not correctly recorded. And if you're a non-citizen, we had people who begged us, don't register me to vote, I'm not eligible. But there's no inconsistency between all of that. But we have kind of a combination of fiscal, legal, and practical issues here. The legal issue is that Gilberto is a county employee, and as a county employee, he or any other county employee, he can't delegate it to another county employee, are prohibited by the county executive's executive order from asking people for their citizenship status. So if we were to have a citizenship limitation on future vote, we'd have to find non-employees of the county to be asking that question. No. Number two, if the current Montgomery County Public Schools policy makes it against school system policy to make distinctions based on citizenship status, which means that we would be potentially giving up student service learning credit for all of our future vote students if we were to limit future vote only to citizens, because we'd be violating school system policy. And we all know that one of the great draws, one of the things that makes our program possible for the vast majority of students who are citizens is the fact that they get student service learning hours for their participation. I've already mentioned that it saves us a lot of money, because otherwise we would have to have that many more election judges to do what the students are doing. And then I think we need to look at what kind of community we want to be. I personally was very touched by Gracie's story. Most of that I had not heard before, despite knowing her fairly well from when we served together on the board. She was not a citizen when she started her volunteer activities, and we have plenty of people who are in that category. I have absolutely no problem with our making sure that none of our student volunteers are doing things that they shouldn't be doing, and they're only doing the things that they should be. But from my observation, managing lines, handing out I voted stickers, most of those things, telling people to turn off their cell phones when they enter the polling places, most of those things do not require a question as to whether someone is a citizen or not, and they certainly don't require that it not be students doing it. The students doing it help us a lot, and then we recruit from that group for election judges. There's a reason why our average age for election judges in Montgomery County is far better than it is. Better is the wrong way of putting that, especially as I get older. But is younger than the average age in a lot of places, because we have done an outstanding job. I say we. Pilberto has done an outstanding job of recruiting young people to be election judges. In fact, we had an example of that when Paul Ellis came and spoke to us today, and it sounds like he was an election judge while he was still in high school. And I have no doubt that he did an outstanding job as an election judge. So from my perspective, I'm more than happy to have conversations about what the website should say. I'm more than happy to have conversations about what the program should do. But one board member does not get to determine what happens in this very important program. And I know that the program has great support, not only on the board, but in the community, with the county government, and obviously with the students and their parents.
Well, gee, David, are we welcome to have our own opinions?
Absolutely.
I want to ask you, how in heaven's name does one register to vote if you can't ask if they're citizens?
I'm not saying that at all.
You just said...
No, I didn't.
No county employee may ask anyone about their citizenship because it's a blah, 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 blah rule. And I'm saying, how in heaven's name do you protect the integrity of the system if no county employee is allowed to ask the citizenship?
Oh, well, county, when you register to vote, you're affirming under the penalties of perjury whether you are or you're not a U.S. citizen. The very first question they ask: are you 18 years of age, and are you a U.S. citizen? So if you were to answer no to that, then you wouldn't be eligible to vote.
And if you were to answer yes to that and it's not true, you could be prosecuted for the fraud that you have committed. And put in jail. And perhaps deported if you're a non-citizen.
I'm not going to take up extraneous time going point by point in rebuttal to what David said. But I don't appreciate having my sincerely held belief for the sanctity and the integrity of the vote questioned or aspersions cast at me because I have an opinion that would like to protect the sanctity of the vote of legitimate citizens in Montgomery County. And when this was passed, were we a sanctuary county, where we had the crime rate that we have now? A lot of things have changed in 15 years. We didn't have the number of citizens, of students in the numbers that we have today that are not U.S. citizens. And I simply am looking out for the best interests of Montgomery County voters. Again, I don't appreciate having my sincerely held concerns cast the way you did, and that's all I have to say.
I would just say that I had no intention to cast aspersions on anybody. I don't believe I did. If there's something specific that I said that you object to, I would be happy to discuss it with you. What I said was, I disagree with just about everything you said about the Future Vote program. I said that I thought that the program has served us very well in a number of different ways. I did not say anything about what your motivations are. I will just say that all of us, to my knowledge, all of us at this table are concerned about protecting the sanctity of our votes. None of us want ineligible voters to be voting. None of us want non-citizens to be voting. None of us want non-county residents to be voting in Montgomery County. I mean, all of us want only eligible voters to be able to vote in Montgomery County. We just have a difference of opinion as to how to get there.
Okay, I think we've discussed that.
We have a
Did
motion
you
on the
want
floor.
to look at this?
So on their website,
Can you tell me what happens when you get to school, which comes before school type?
so it's school, Janet.
Because that's where I got stopped.
Yeah, just-
Because I went to that
Well, in
side
high
and it
school.
didn't have any of the
But we'll-
schools.
No.
drop down. I want something that's not
Oh, Georgetown
Right there.
Prep.
What happens
Georgetown
if you
Prep.
can't answer that?
Yeah, so right
There it is.
So you could type so she'll type in Georgetown Prep. So if Georgetown Prep is not there because it's a parochial private school, then the parent will
But
type
I
in.
got a drop-down menu.
No, yeah, exactly. But if you hit that drop down, if you hit the triangle, can you touch the triangle, Janet? On that school, just right to the to the right. So when you click there, that's what you got. The
Yeah.
whole drop down.
I
Exactly.
thought it's very confusing that
So-
if you do what's prompted, and that is you go to a drop-down, and
Okay.
you can't answer what the drop-down is,
So
I then didn't see a place where you could type it in. So
She's
Just type into
she's
the
typing in
screen.
Georgetown Prep
in
now.
that field, there's a blank field
That's-
there, and then the school type, and the next one is school type. So if she clicks on that drop down, you
Well,
have
it's
homeschool,
the rest-
private, public,
yeah.
and then the grade, and then gender, and then ethnicity. So.
Why do you need the gender?
Oh, because it helps me statistically to see what's the breakdown, but it's almost evenly 50-50.
Okay.
So it is typable. That was one of the enhancements from last couple of years back, that if
I
the
think
school
it's-
didn't.
Okay, I still think it's confusing
Okay.
that it gives you a drop-down and it only shows the public schools.
Most of the times we get calls about that, and we just tell
There
them
you
to
go.
type it over.
Yeah, but we tell them type it over.
And not everybody has time to do that. I banged my head against the computer for half an hour, but without realizing.
you add
you could type
directions?
it
We
in.
will get a note added. I will talk to Josephine and get a note added to the screen.
Yeah, well, I know.
There's not a homeschool.
But you have a motion on the floor
I do indeed.
to
May I,
make
Mr.
changes
President?
to.
Can I just make a clarification for because there's references to the website, and all of this is on the web. So I just want to clarify that the screen that you're seeing right now and the questions on it are the things that need to be done ASAP so that we can go ahead and do the rollover and have DTS. DTS needs to code all of that stuff that was on that screen. Other things that are on the county website referencing the Future Vote program are changeable by staff at any time. They're not part of this
We can bring that
rollover
to
of
the board
software.
next month and
There's a
in
motion.
advance and give proposed language. And the board can make their decision. Okay?
We're going to vote on David's motion.
Well, so there were things that staff is going to be, we have a deadline of tomorrow? Is that what-
The election judge module has to go tomorrow. The website discussion can be next month. They're not, they're not the same.
So anything has to be done by tomorrow?
Yes.
The future, that.
In terms of the
screen
board decision?
No.
And
The only concern is the website language. That can be changed next month. That demonstration that we just showed you with the recommendation that Janet just made with greater instruction, that is what has to go tomorrow. I need that. This department needs it for the election judges and polling place changes.
You said the changes we just discussed need to be done by tomorrow. Can you do that? So the next opportunity to make a significant change to the Future Vote program will be what, 2 years from now? And I've been trying for months to get on the record to talk about this.
But if significant changes have to be made, I guess you'll need board approval.
Not to the software.
No, but I'm talking.
Mean to the website.
Yeah.
To the program and to the website.
Wait, you just said we can change the website.
Yes, websites, the language can still be changed on the.
Somebody
Like
actually-
frequently asked questions, that can still be changed. The language that you identify that you have concerns about, that can be brought to the full board next month.
Okay.
That works.
For discussion by the full board.
That works.
That's okay.
Did you all say there's a motion on the floor?
There is a motion on the floor to not change the website or the program.
Without the prior approval of the majority vote of the Board of Elections.
So now we vote on the
the
motion.
website, not the program.
I said the
Margaret.
program, not the programming, but the program.
Okay.
Could you
Or
restate that
website.
for Naheed,
Thank
please?
you.
Sure. No changes shall be made to the Future Vote program or website without prior approval by a majority vote of the Board of Elections.
Okay. And those include the things that we just talked about.
It was exactly like Margaret said. It does not include the module because the module, I don't consider a change to the module to add a note about private schools to be a change to the program, nor do I consider it to be a change to the website. So all we would really be doing by approving this motion is what Margaret just said she was willing to do, which is to bring this to the board, before you implement the changes.
To the website. Or the program. I want that software to go tomorrow.
Understood. I heard you a few times. I heard you the first time.
Margaret, do you want to pull up the website so they can see what else they're locking in to not change without a majority vote of the
We would like to
board?
be able to go home.
Yeah, I can understand. I agree.
Well, so, let me just say this. The question and answer, in part, this is something that when I spoke to Dr. Z and Margaret, I said that perhaps the question and answers did not necessarily truly reflect, based upon what my experience has been over 17 years, exactly what the Future Vote students actually do on election day, and that perhaps the staff should look at that. And so whatever proposed changes they have to those question and answers, that could be brought to the board next month to explain whether they're
That is absolutely fine. My concern is that changes to the website could be changes to the program. Or they could, basically that the board should have an opportunity to understand the reasoning behind any changes as to whether it's because they don't accurately reflect what's being done, or whether it involves changing what's being done, or whether it involves changing how we're describing what's being done. Those are three different things, and I think the board, given the sensitivity of this issue, the public interest in this issue, I think the board should have an opportunity to say that. It sounds like it's not that difficult to do.
Well, I know exactly how it works.
It's all now, I guess.
Before we vote on that, I just want to say I've been screaming for 3 months to try to get information, and here we are, the end of October. And if we're now going to vote that the board has to vote on every change that might come forward, I'm not going to go along with it because it's not going to happen. and it's tying hands, and I've already been, it's already been agreed that I've raised some serious concerns that have been agreed to, and if we have to bring every little change to a full board vote, it's like telling me, Diane, forget it, go away.
Well, that's not the way I view how the board operates. We talk about lots of things here. We resolve a lot of things here. And important things, and this is definitely in that category, an important program of this board. I don't have the ability to get the staff to change programs by myself. It requires a vote of the board. That's why we have a board. And so it's certainly not my desire to tell you, Diane, not to discuss it with people. I hope you do. I hope you discuss it with Gilberto and Margaret and everybody else, because I think that we should all get informed about what's going on here before we propose changes. I just don't think that one of us should be able to impose changes without the board being in agreement.
And what assurance is there it's not going to take 3 board meetings to get something done? Everything I've learned about this I've done on my own. And it's taken this many months to come up, to get this close to it, to this many questions. I don't have the time or the resources to do all that, to bring a perfectly packaged motion to the board every time I want to talk about something.
I think Roberto's already started to work on the questions and answers, and he can circulate what he believes would be an accurate description of what the future vote students actually do.
So if I could, yes, that's fair to say. My concern is...
Roberto?
Yes.
We will circulate the questions tomorrow.
Yes.
Okay? What we've got. And we'll circulate it to board members tomorrow.
I should just add that in my experience, when I've had questions of the staff, they've gotten answered. And I've personally observed both Margaret and Gilberto offering briefings to you. And I think that those are well worth having. And I think it does help for us to know what's going on before we vote.
It's a significant program. I think the full board deserves to weigh in on any significant changes. But, we do that with every program. We're going to take a vote.
So, just a minute. What did we already decide about what's reflected on the website about protect the security of the vote, or the veracity of the vote and the security of the polling booth? Do we have to wait another month to come back and talk about that?
According to Mr. Naaman's motion, we will submit to the board tomorrow proposed changes to the website for the board to discuss at the November meeting. That is what I just got done.
Okay.
So I don't want to wait another month, because 3 months ago I started talking about this.
My motion did not require that it be tomorrow, but that would obviously be...
We're ready.
Okay, that would be very helpful to get it. And from my perspective, if there is if delay till November causes a problem, I'm available for special meetings, et cetera. But I'm not willing to give my proxy to anyone else.
And if there's an issue that is timely and we can't wait till November, we just have a special meeting.
Yes.
We can have a phone meeting.
Yes, we can do it telephonically.
Yeah, sure. Phone.
Sure, we can vote about that. And so what's the process to do that?
Jim has to call a meeting.
Yeah, we call a meeting. If it's time sensitive and November is too late for something that has to be done, we'll have a telephonic.
And without violating the open meetings rules?
No, we have to give notice. We give notice to the public. We just have a meeting by phone.
Dial in. So somebody would call Jim.
No, we have a dial in.
No, so Jim would call a meeting, and then notice is given to the public, and the board members don't necessarily need to be here. They could be on the phone, but the public would be able to go ahead and listen in to the meeting via speakerphone.
So let's call the question. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed?
No.
Diane. All right, so that was 4-1.
Let's move on. Turn off the quickly.
Okay.
Please.
All right, so we're up to Margaret, your report.
Yes, sir. We made a presentation to the Council on Aging, Chris and I, and it was well received. Also, we had the Digital Defense Democracy from the Harvard Belfer group come and visit us in advance of their meeting with the State Board of Elections, talking about digital security. Then personnel, we are in the process of trying to set up interviews to fill the position that was once Eric Wilson's position. We just have to get it lined up hopefully this week. Then we still have temporary tech staff working part-time on the equipment, and we started today testing the new poll book software upgrades. And I want to thank Janet for being in 2 places at once all day today. So anyway, the next thing is the budget, the current budget. Kara, you want to come on up?
So we are currently...
Kara, we want to hear your lovely voice on that microphone.
I do love being at the center. Okay. So if everyone has their budget spreadsheet, and this is as of October 10th. So we're currently at about $724,000, and most of our expenditures continue to be in personnel. If you have any specific questions, you can let me know. The past month we met with the budget subcommittee. We are getting that going. And as you see on your agenda, we are going to be talking about the supplemental briefly.
Is there any questions with regards to the expenditures to date for FY20? They're pretty much personnel. We're just beginning to purchase supplies.
Margaret, that $350,000 expenditure that the state board is mandating, where's that?
This is the supplemental. That's the next agenda item. So Kara has put together the proposed supplemental appropriation request. Obviously, we will have to wait until October 31st to determine whether or not we have to submit the $117,000 for a 12th early voting center. But that's basically the price it's been, and that we started pricing it out back in January, and we're pretty solid with those numbers. Same-day voter registration network, that is the $349,563 amount. That is for the network, the barcode scanners, and I think, is there routers included? No routers with this.
That's just for the lines for the polling place, the barcode scanners with the 10% contingency.
Okay, and then the next fiscal year, we will have to spend $60,000.
Oh, but is the router included?
Okay. There's a continuing licensing fee of $60,000, but that won't be until the next fiscal year. So that's that amount. Same-day voter registration. There is a regulation that has passed requiring that we add 2 additional election judges per polling place. That's 510 individuals, and that is their voting operations judges. The cost of their annual, their stipend plus their training fee.
Does that rule or law or whatever it is,
Regulation.
stipulate what they're supposed to do?
Yeah, they are supposed to be on the voting. They'll be on the electronic poll book as well as the same-day voter registration.
Only.
Well, we're going to train them just as we do with all of our voting operation judges. We cross-train them, but no, their focus will be provisional and same-day voter registration. Then the Maryland State Board of Election, their cost to county is increased dramatically. And that's for MD voters, that's for the licensing of the poll book software, that's licensing for the voting system, and other materials and personnel from the state board. Then the next one is part-time salaries, board stipends, seasonal temps, and overtime. Do you want to kind of explain that one better than me? I know you do.
I can try. So we have worked, last year we had a bit of a deficit situation, and we have worked very hard to align our election calendar. All of our managers have worked very hard, especially adjusting to this new budget system, to align the election calendar with their needs for seasonal temps and overtimes and justifying those costs. And the way we projected that out, and what we need to maintain current services, and to also to perform these unfunded mandates, we would need additional funds for that. And so what we have come up with, the figure that we've come up with, meeting those goals in the most efficient way possible, we would need about $552,997. And this is reducing, we've reduced, Lisa and Al Soon have worked to come up with rates that would be low cost in terms of our seasonal employees. So this is really the bottom dollar rate that we could perform with. And so we're trying our best here, but this is what the staff really working together has come up with to continue to provide the best services to the taxpayers.
So, for instance, one of the things that we considered was possibly using hourly employees to do nursing homes, but we determined that if we did hire temporaries to serve as our nursing home individuals, then these are the same individuals that work for us on election day. Instead of paying them a stipend, we would have to pay them an hourly rate, which would increase our costs. For whatever reason, we were not given any monies for the canvass, for any of the election judge to do the canvass. For unknown reasons, the stipend that is paid to board members was not included in the budget. So,
I'm wondering about the word structural deficit.
Well, there is a structural deficit. So everything that is included, there's no gravy in this. This is basically a bare bones budget. And I also want to point out to you that $933,000 is what the election judge stipend overall amount was, but in the last general election, we spent $1.1 million. And the overall budget, we had, even with the increase that Mr. Hucker got for the department, we're still approximately $270,000 less than what we were budgeted a year ago. So we believe that once that $268,000 will help us address some of the wait time issues. We also, just to let you know, other things that we're doing to address try to get a bigger bang for the buck is, in the past we've had 16 to 20 individuals in every training class, and I've ordered the staff to put 21 to 24 individuals in every training class. Now, we are...
you know what, and having gone through the training, that's a burden on everybody.
We are trying to have more classes across the county. We're having them at White Oak, Silver Spring, the Rockville campus, Montgomery College, here, and here. So we are doing things to try to expand it. Anyway, we are asking for your initial approval. Obviously, we have to wait until October 31st to consider this request.
Just a couple of questions. The election judges to address wait times, you said it was 2 per precinct. Is that literally 2 in every precinct, or is that an average of 2 per precinct, and you can put 3 if someone needs it and 1 if someone doesn't?
It doesn't, there's very few that doesn't.
Right.
For the most part, it's 2 per precinct. Now, if I have a precinct that has 400 voters, I'm like Damascus Library, not to pick on Damascus, then I'm only going to have 1 judge there.
So this is our own determination at the county level as to how to allocate those judges.
Right, exactly.
And so we can take into
like for instance, Praisner.
Right.
Praisner, White Oak, Silver Spring, if the board accepts our recommendation to move to that as an election day. Those are places where I'm going to have the provisional same-day voter registration, because we saw what happened the last time. We can do as many assertive things to try to get people to the correct voting place, but they're still going to go there because it's an early vote.
So it's basically, it's 510 judges to be allocated according to need.
So same day for same day, 2 election judges per polling place for same day voter registration / provisional, plus then the 268,000 for election day judges for to manage the vote. So
right, but the 268,000. Those are the ones. I understand. For same day, you need to have a certain number of people in every precinct.
Yes.
For wait times, you get to allocate it based on need.
The presentation that you'll see a little bit later.
Right. Okay. Now, as far as the networking goes, we reviewed a letter that I gathered Jim probably signed this afternoon.
Yes,
So I guess my question is, what is the timing on when we have to request the money from the county, especially given that we're hoping that the state will respond? I mean, obviously we have both fiscal and non-fiscal concerns about the networking. We have security concerns. We have the fact that it singles out the larger jurisdictions rather than all the jurisdictions, and we have the fact that they're trying to impose this cost completely on us. And I guess I want to know if we have opportunity to consider all of those issues, and in particular whether we have a time to consider other funding sources. For example, if we were to get help from the legislature on paying what would ordinarily be the state's share on this, because it sounds like at this point it's 100% on us, and that just doesn't seem. It's not consistent with our normal practice, which is usually a 50-50 split, and it's obviously. I mean, that's a huge amount of money to for it to be all on the county.
Well, you don't want to do more than one supplemental, so whatever you want that you potentially the board may have to pay for.
Right.
I would suggest you include in the supplemental, and then I'm sure the county would be more than happy to hear that $349,563 is going to get returned to them.
Right, or half of that if we're able to get the state to. And when I say the state, I'm not talking about the state board at this point, because it sounds like they've already said it's all on us. But it may be possible to find other ways to get funding.
We believe that using the same billing methods that the state has used in the past, once they decide, the state board makes their final decision to go with the network, then they would bill us like they generally do. And so the next bill we probably won't receive until January. Then the next bill would come in at the end of the third quarter, which is April 1st. So we would still, and just because they're holding the money in abeyance for us, then that doesn't mean we get to spend it. So for instance, the election judges are not going to be paid until 6 weeks after April 28th. So, okay, so we're just asking.
Got it.
To, Just put this in the reserve for the Board of
Okay.
Elections.
Well, I just want to make sure that we have the opportunity to pursue other ways of getting that funding, which I think might help us.
We are advocating
Yeah.
that strongly.
Yeah, okay, great. Thank you.
Need a motion.
Yes, I do. Would the board approve a motion for the staff to begin the process of preparing a supplemental appropriation request
I so
after October 31st?
Is there a motion?
I so moved.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed?
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Kara. Voter registration, staff sent you the monthly statistics. We had a grand time at National Voter Registration Day. I believe did they get that? Did you send that out? The National Voter Registration Day? Okay. Roberto sent you the information on National Voter Registration Day. We did receive a lot of registrations. We had 92 individuals submit applications, and we had quite a few absentee requests.
We did events all throughout the county, at the libraries, community centers, and we also took part in a event with the DC Board of Elections and jurisdictions from Virginia and other Maryland jurisdictions, and the Nationals invited us out to do voter registration on National Voter Registration Day. So we were able to go out on multiple jurisdiction outreach. We like to do these events because it allows us not only to reach out to more voters, but it also allows us to call out the distinction between our jurisdictions, because our times and dates of our elections, even close of registration, are not the same. And so we work together closely with the other jurisdictions through the Council of Governments to get messaging out. So this was one of our joint events that we took part in. So yeah, we had a great National Voter Registration Day. And
What did they do?
What's
Outside
that
the-
date?
It was in September 24th.
Every year that's voter registration day?
It's
the fourth
second-
Tuesday?
Yeah, right. It's like a reoccurring.
It's a reoccurring by the day of the week, and which week is in September.
Oh, September? All right,
Yeah.
thanks.
You did it at the National Game?
Yes.
Nice.
Yeah, there's pictures, I think, of me on Facebook
Oh,
at
wow.
the National Voter
I saw
Registration.
it.
Yes, yes.
Woo. Did you?
I think I made the camera roll on that one.
Hope
so.
we won that.
Yeah, that was the clinch.
Oh, yay.
Yeah, that was when I think clinched it with the walk-off home run, I think.
Well, they set you up outside?
Yes.
One of the gates?
We were actually inside, kind of by where the main restaurant is.
Nice.
Dr. Z was there, and team members, and Jessica from our
I'll
DJ
volunteer
recruiting.
to help next time.
Okay, I'll let you know.
Thanks.
Yeah, it's great.
Not on TV, I will run on TV.
Yeah.
Okay, going on to the action items, the letter
Is
was
there anything with the
written.
state board? Or?
Okay, State Board. Upgrade voting system. I sent you the email. It's not going to happen. I hope that you talk to the State Board members about why that decision was made. The poll book software prototypes were delivered to us. Staff started testing this week. The pertinence paperwork related to the October 31st meeting will be sent by October 24th. That was the deadline the State Board staff gave the Montgomery County staff with regards to the two locations, White Oak and Dasik. And we will have that to the State Board by the 24th as promised. Tom Reimer was introduced as the new Chief Information Security Officer. I think you guys met him at the State Board meeting. State Board has directed the county boards to do specific testing for the implementation of the network, with future testing to be determined. So we're basically doing that. Board adjourned.
I don't have much to add other than, as many of you know, Rockville's having an election, so we have entered into an MOU with Rockville to provide support. I know Jessica and Janet have been providing assistance to Rockville. They're doing a all absentee mail-in election this election cycle, and I believe the ballots are going.
All mail-in?
Yeah.
That's the big,
All
okay.
mail.
So there's no polling places or anything?
No, and they have about 1,000 ballots that have been returned already. It's my understanding, and they're going to be tabulated here, correct?
Yep.
When is that? When does the election end?
November 5th.
It's the 5th.
Election day.
Yeah. Yeah, and they have absentee drop boxes in the City Hall.
At the end, we'd like a report on how many registered voters actually voted vis-a-vis how many voted when they had polls.
The city of Rockville?
Sure.
We'll get that
Yeah, they
information.
have about 6,000 registered voters.
Okay.
They've had a higher turnout.
Okay, so the next item is old business polling places 2020. You should have received some information electronically on September 18th and then a week before. Chris, this is you. So if you'll come in first.
I know. Lisa Moore will be sent down. I didn't forget that.
Okay, it's gonna be up there, folks.
Right.
But they're in here.
All right. These, as Margaret has mentioned, you have received some preliminary information the month before and just this week again. This 2020 proposed polling place changes. These are the polling places that will be in place for our April elections. The first sections are precincts returning to their home polling places following the summer MCPS construction that we experienced in 2018. The first one that we're returning is Cloverly Elementary School for 515. Registered voters 3584 with a turnout of over 31%. Our temporary location was St. Andrew's Iranian Center, and we were away from Cloverly because of summer construction. Cloverly is in precinct. It's a public facility. It's ADA compliant. Electioneering is permitted. Good parking and good room size. Here is a photo of the Ukrainian church that we used in June and November of 18, and then we'll return to Cloverly. Next one is 608. Stone Mill Elementary, little over 2,000 registered voters, 41% turnout in 18. The temporary location that we used was Nancy Dasick Potomac Recreation Center. And again, we were out of Stone Mill because of summer construction. It's adjacent to the precinct. It's a public facility. It's ADA compliant. Electioneering is permitted. Good parking and good room size. This is a photo of both of the buildings. We were at Dasick in 18. We're returning to 2020 Stone Mill Elementary School.
Is the Dasick Center in precinct or also out of precinct?
No, it is in precinct there.
For 608.
David, I could not answer that for you. I will find that out.
Because my question would be why we would go out of precinct if there is a suitable facility in the precinct.
Basically, the contention was when we made this move just for the basic June election is that we would return to their home precinct. I will say that Stone Mill voters have experienced significant changes over the years. 608 was instituted in 2004, and Stone Mill became the home precinct for that location. But before 608 and before 2000, I didn't go beyond 2000, Stone Mill has been in play, and those voters have been changed numerous times. I wouldn't suggest changing them again.
Well, but you are changing them again. It's just a question of whether
Well,
it's to where
I'm
they were
changing
before or
them
where they
back
were in
to-
Can you
2018.
go back one, because if I recall, they said it's within precinct, just go back.
Okay, it is,
The one before that was within precinct.
this is adjacent.
Yeah.
Now, I will tell you, Stone Mill is on, it's on the
David,
boundary.
I'm gonna have somebody go find out for you right now, so we can keep going on this.
That's fine.
Okay.
I mean,
I'm looking.
I'm just going to say that I know Alan requested by email that we get maps for all the precincts, and I'm certainly, I agree
Here
with
they
that. That we're going to definitely want to be able to see that.
Thank you.
I will tell you, Stone Mill is on the border of
Pass it down one by one.
608. So if one side of that
No,
street
stapled
is
together.
in
Stapled. Yeah,
precinct,
okay.
Stone Mill is outside the precinct just by being across the street.
What's the street? In other words, is it a large street or a small street?
It's a residential street.
They're going back around. Is, right? No, mine's right here.
Oh, here's another one. Packet.
David?
One more.
Stone Mill,
We're on the second page.
Thank you.
Stone Mill is on Stonebridge View Drive. It's on one side of the precinct, Mr. Naaman, and the precinct that we're representing is on the other side of the street. So Stonebridge View is the boundary line to the precinct.
And where is I gather the basic center is at the bottom of this map? On Trevilla Road?
Yeah, see that green area where the park is? David?
I see a green area that's in 6-6. Is it in the 6-8?
It's the closest, it's down, David. It's down here. If you follow Trevilla Road, there's a little park here, then next door is a kind of a wooded area, and then there's Dacic.
So Dacic is actually further away from the precinct than Stone Mill is.
Yes, it's in 606. You ready?
Yes.
All right, we're going to go on to 719 North Bethesda Middle School, and we've got 4,200 plus registered voters, and we had a turnout of over 36%. The temporary location was Wingate Elementary, and the reason for our change again was summer construction. 719 North Bethesda Middle School is in precinct. It's a public facility, ADA compliant, electioneering, and good parking and room size.
Where is it on this map?
Need to go to 719.
It says before after the fours.
It's in order as we're reviewing them.
Yes, thank you, Lisa.
Thank you. Okay, got it.
And the lower left-hand corner has a red, the precinct is in red in the map of the full county.
But where's the polling place?
Is that an arrow? This arrow where the polling was is?
I think that's just indicating that's the name of the street.
No, it's the street.
North Bethesda is on Broadmoor.
Right down the bottom.
719, arrow. Is that arrow we're talking about?
No, it's not the arrow.
You're at 720, you're at 719, right?
Yeah.
Or it's
Broadmoor
Broadmoor,
Drive?
not Broadmoor.
Bradmore, it's down at the bottom.
It's in precinct, it's in that,
Where it says Green Tree Road.
It says Green
above,
Tree right there.
Yeah.
It's in the precinct?
Yes, it is.
Bradmore's at the very bottom, right above where it says green tree in large print.
And the school is on the north side of that road in the white area on the map.
So it's kind of where it says Terra Murray Drive, but not the arrow.
Correct.
Okay, just for future reference, as we're going through this, the only other location that we're going to talk about on the top part of your spreadsheet that's in yellow is Lucy Barnsley, is not in precinct. All the other ones in this section are in precinct. And this is a photo of Wingate, which was our June 18 site, and North Bethesda is now ready to move back into. 720 Ashburton Elementary, 2,400 registered voters, little about 14.5% is the turnout, or 48, excuse me, is the turnout. Temporary location was the Davis Library. We were out because of summer construction. We are in precinct when we return to Ashburton. It's a public facility, it's compliant, electioneering, good parking, and room size are all in shape. This is a photo, Davis Library, which was in 18, and we're returning to Ashburton after some summer maintenance. 801, Alany Elementary School has a count of about 3,700 registered voters. 41% is the turnout. Temporary location was St. Peter's Parish. We voted in their all-purpose room. Reason for the change, again, was summer construction. We are in precinct for Alany Elementary School. We're a public facility, ADA compliant. Electioneering is permitted. We have good parking and good room size. Yes, sir.
Maybe Kevin knows this. Where was the church where they had the divider that didn't open up? Recall that where that was?
Yeah, I got to go back and look. I forget.
There was.
I believe that one is off of Belpre Road.
Oh, you're talking about St. Matt's Presbyterian, 1364.
Right. It's at Georgia Avenue and Belpre Road.
And we are in the midst of finalizing all of our lease agreements. We will have all three sections out at St. Matt's.
Good. Okay. Thanks.
Okay. 801, here's the photo of St. Peter's Parish, and then there's Alany Elementary School, which we are returning to. 909 is Whetstone Elementary School. We had 4,100 registered voters with a turnout of 34%. Our temporary location was Covenant United Methodist in Montgomery Village. We were out because of summer construction, and again, Whetstone is in precinct. It's a public facility. It's ADA compliant. Electioneering is permitted. We have good parking and room size at Whetstone. This is a photo of Whetstone, and then Covenant was what we used in 18. 1204 and 0209, Lois Rockwell. We are returning. We were at Cedar Grove Elementary School. Our registered voters are almost 3,100. Our turnout is about 38%. Based on the precincts, it's 33% for 0209. Our temporary location is at Cedar Grove, which is out on Route 27. We were out of Rockwell, again, because of summer construction. And we're in precinct for 1204, which is our majority precinct. It's a public facility. It's ADA compliant. We have electioneering. Our parking is good, and our room size is good.
Can you help us figure out where it is on this map?
Okay, we want
12 Rockwell.
Yes.
Close Rockwell is at 24555 Cut Sales Drive, Damascus.
Yeah, that doesn't help me find it on this map. I've been trying to follow along on my phone, but it's this one I'm having a hard time finding it.
Well, if you can read those streets, David, I would really like to know it.
You need a flashlight.
I can read the ones that actually have writing on them, not all of them do. But I can't figure out where it is.
What's the name
It
of the
is-
street again?
The name of the
Cutsale.
street is
Cut sale.
If you follow
Cutsale.
up at the top where it says Sweepstakes Road,
Okay.
in between the
Oh, yeah,
second
I see
E
it.
and the P, if you look down about an inch, you can see the building. There's a gray building.
I see.
Up
Right,
here.
right below a little lake, it looks like.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Got it. Thanks.
Wow, is that how you spell it? Cut sale?
The word cut sail is
Looks like quick
going
stop.
vertically up and down,
Yeah.
and it's
Yeah,
down
no,
at the
I get it.
bottom
Looks
over the
like
word
quick
drive.
stop.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay,
Very
thank
hot
you.
by the Little Lake.
It might help you if I know these are small, but the gray, if you're following, the gray or larger squares that you might see are usually the larger buildings. The dots are the homes. Okay.
Four eyes to it. Got it. All right.
All right, Kensington Parkwood Elementary School. We have almost 4,400 registered voters, almost 49% turnout in 18. A temporary location was Cedar Lane Unitarian Church. We're out because of summer construction again. We're in precinct for Kensington Parkwood. We're a public facility. We're ADA compliant. We have no election hearing issues. We are using good parking and room size. And again, we have a photo. They had quite a bit of renovation out at Kensington Parkwood. Looks nice. And our Cedar Lane is where we voted in 18. 1346, Lucy V. Barnsley Elementary. Again, we're returning after summer construction. About 2,200 registered voters. It's almost 43% in turnout for 2018. We were at Bauer Drive Rec Center. Now we are returning to Barnsley. We've been at Barnsley since 2010.
Is this the one that before that was at the Children's Learning Center?
Yes, it was.
Where is that on this map?
What, where we are now?
No, I want to know. I know we're proposing to go back to Barnsley, but there's a former school building that was also used before, and there was some controversy about Barnsley, as I recall, when it was at Barnsley.
Okay, I have to tell you, I was just out there. I should have these things memorized.
Was it Chadwick Lane
But you would
before?
like to know the street. I even had it in my.
Lucy Barnsley is on Nadine.
Right, no, Lucy Barnsley, I know.
You're talking about CL, the Children's
I'm
Learning
talking
Center?
about what the other building was and what's there now. Remember, we actually had a whole long conversation about that other building because there was some construction being done there, I believe.
Yes, we can, after we find out the address, Mr. Naaman, we can discuss that if you would like. Children's Learning Center was on Bester,
Right.
which is 4511 Bester Drive in Rockville. And that was in precinct, or that is in precinct.
And do we know what's there now?
The building is there, renovated. It is no longer the Children Learning Center. Sometimes it still is referred to that.
Right.
It was originally the English Manor Elementary School.
Right.
It is majorly, there are some academic programs in there for very young children, small children, infants and toddlers who have special needs. That is the program that's basically run out of there. The upper level of the building is devoted to operations, facility operations for MCPS. They have basically administrative offices in that building.
So both buildings are public buildings and both buildings are in precinct?
No, Lucy Barnsley is right outside. Lucy Barnsley's in 1352. And it is outside of precinct 1346.
Oh, I see. So Lucy Barnsley's not even on this map of the precinct?
It's on Nadine.
Right, I mean, but Nadine is to the west.
Yes.
I really should know
There's,
this, but I don't.
there's about a mile's distance between the two locations.
So-
But it happens that Nadine, Barnsley on Nadine is outside of the precinct, 1352.
So did you look into the in-precinct option?
Yes, I did. I can advance this if we'd like to take a real quick look at it. It's in the back of your handout.
English Manor, yes.
Okay. English Manor is in the precinct. Now, in 2018, they were voting at Bauer, and the turnout was about 43%, and there's about 2,200 voters in the precinct. English Manor is in the precinct. It's a public facility. It is ADA compliant. Electioneering would be permitted. The room size is good. The parking is not. And we would be sharing the facility with MCPS administrative offices on election day.
Right.
Because they're open.
They
Right,
are
understood.
open.
Understood. But we also would be picking the public bill. I mean, we are obligated by law.
I get that. I'm just
Yeah.
telling you.
Yeah.
The thing is that the employees of the public school will be parking in the parking lot, a very small parking lot, and our voters are going to be on the street walking.
Right, but our voters are also otherwise going to have to travel a mile out of precinct to go vote.
And I think they'd be happier with the parking space.
Well, why don't we ask them?
Can we flip through the pictures?
Yeah.
I was told there's about 65 permanent staff members there in the building. So we would be cohabitating, and we would be sharing that parking with those 65 staff members. This is an aerial view, and you have it in your packet. Now, over where it says future parking, that is just dirt now. I was hoping that parking would be there. When I was there in 18, and this building was under construction, or not construction, but renovation, interior renovation, that I was told would be future parking, and MCPS plans for it to be parking at some point, but they haven't given me a date, and it's just all torn up. There was some excavation there, but nothing has happened.
You say they haven't given you a date. Do we know if it's supposed to be within the year?
They haven't told me. It's like it, for all intents and purposes, my impression is that it's not in the plans. They would like to do it, but it isn't in the construction plans right now. This is the room. And what you're looking, it's an all-purpose room, and what you're looking at right now is it's divided about down the middle. On the other side of that partition is where small toddlers play for observation. The teachers, the preschool teachers sit and allow them to play, and they're observed.
And they would be doing that during an election if we were there?
We will have to ask for all that to be moved out. We cannot cohabitate like that.
How many parking places are at Barnsley?
At Barnsley, I would have to go look up my information.
Not a huge number.
This is the picture from the other side of the partition. This is front of the building. There's 10 spaces that are designated visitor parking and handicap. And then there's the director's spaces there as well. This is the photo of the parking. That is the day that I was out, about 2 weeks ago. And there was very little parking, so I understand from talking with the staff, the community's not necessarily happy with the situation because the staff there's 40 spaces in the parking lot. The staff has to use the street as well to park.
There are 40 spaces for 68 employees.
65 employees.
So where do the
yes.
rest of them park?
Why are we talking?
They're parking out on the street.
And 10 spaces in this
This-
side right here.
This is the street, and this is what the street looked like when I was there.
I see.
So whoever could not park in the parking lot or in the circle to be at work that day, parked out on the street.
So
This
Kristen-
is what I was explaining about the additional parking that is just dug up and left that way, and I don't know what the plans are to finalize that.
Chris, just to clarify, correct me if I'm wrong, this is the public facility that is in precinct.
Yes, it is.
So the others that are being talked about are the public facilities that are in the adjacent precinct.
Correct.
At the far end of the adjacent precinct.
There's a distance of a mile between this location and Bardsley.
Right, it's the difference between voters being able to walk to the polls and most of them not.
Would you allow me, Margaret, to give some statistics?
Sure.
When this came up the last time, we did some research. The turnout at Schreiber at 11 a.m. was 181. Oh, excuse me, I've got the wrong one.
Hardsburg.
Yeah,
Tower Drive.
Why are we doing this?
Because it's a public building in the precinct, and we are obligated by law to support, when we can, both public buildings over private ones and in precinct versus out of precinct. And in this case, it's
no
both.
parking.
Well, we want to see what the options are. I mean, you have to balance the equities here between, I mean, a mile away is a mile away, and it's not in the precinct. And this is, so.
It's a mile away, not precinct, and there's no parking?
No, it's a mile away. The one that's a mile away and not in the precinct has slightly more parking, but it's an elementary school. It's not a middle school or a high school. And I'm very familiar with Barnsley. My daughter went there. So it doesn't have a huge amount of parking either. So then the question becomes, do you want to be a mile away and out of precinct with a slight amount of parking versus, in the middle of the precinct with worse parking? And because that's actually the choice that we have. No one is going to have a lot of parking in these.
Okay, well, let's go quickly.
That's why I'm asking the question. Now, if we're not deciding today, I can save all my questions if you want.
No.
Well, David, what we would like for you to do is write your questions down and send them to Chris.
Sure.
So that we could lay this over for another time.
When do you need this by?
January.
Oh,
January.
Right.
But
Time.
let me say, it's January, but the fact of the matter is that you have candidates looking for these polling place lists now. So we try not to wait till the last minute. Okay?
They can wait.
So we will get, David, please send your questions to Chris.
I will.
And we will have them answered for next month.
I will. Is there still more to be presented? Because I had
Yes.
some other questions about other places. But,
Okay,
yeah, go ahead.
yes.
Yeah.
We have finished up the top portion of your spreadsheet, which is in yellow. Lucy Barnsley was the last of the yellow section. Okay, so now we're going on to proposed changes that are miscellaneous. They have nothing to do with the summer issues, construction issues we had in 2018. We are proposing, this is 410 and 418. Currently, the middle school, we use the cafeteria and the gym. That is what I would propose to do for the primary. This
What numbers
school,
are
this is 410 and 418. It's about in the middle of your packet.
Thanks.
the current middle school is going to become a high school. So when they move out of the current middle school on Old Georgetown Road, the building will be renovated, I believe, flattened and rebuilt. They will we're proposing, since the current building will close after the primary, we're asking that we relocate to the new middle school, Tilden Middle School, use their cafeteria and their gym for the general. So, and the reason that we'll have to move out of 418 is construction. Now, the reason that we're moving back to 410 Middle, the new 410 or new middle school, is because they were under construction as well. So we've been told that we would have access to the new Tilden Middle School for the general election.
Is one of these precincts the one that used to vote in Tilden Center?
Yes. Yeah. We will be moving the one that would actually be voting in the old middle school. We're moving it to the Tilden Center as well,
right,
to house it temporarily.
Right. It's like the flip side of what we did before.
And once the high school is there, then we'll be able to use the high school again. And so those people would return to their home precinct. Okay, so basically, these are public facilities and they will be ADA compliant. They will allow electioneering and there should be good parking for both of the locations. These are middle schools and the parking is plentiful in middle schools. This is kind of, yes. Okay, 410, this is what the location looks like now, but they tell us it will be ready in November. And we put up a map there where the new Tilden Middle School will be is the star, and the yellow star is the current Tilden Middle School, which will be the high school. Okay, 417, Kennedy Shriver.
We have a letter about this, right?
We do.
Yes.
We do indeed.
This is the Kennedy Shriver Aquatic Center. For the primary, Lux Manor is unavailable. So we're proposing that we use Kennedy Shriver Aquatic Center for the primary. And for Lux Manor, we will be able to go for the general. Lux Manor will be completed by November. Our voting population is a little over 3,000. We have about a 36% turnout. We had used Benet in the November election, and the reason was that it was Lux Manor was under construction, and we used Shriver for the primary election.
Whoa!
So
we not only used Shriver for the primary election, we were appalled by Shriver. We voted unanimously to move it for the general election, which we don't often do.
Well, we have lots of complaints about it.
Yes, we do.
Because it's smaller.
We can't.
It's
What's wrong with
tiny.
Benet?
What's wrong with Benet Israel?
But where were the complaints coming from? Were they coming
Two
from
board
our
members
voters?
and then the entire unanimous board.
And one of the board members, prior before Mary Ann, said that there, one of the judges in her building that works there, one of the judges who works there is in her building, complained bitterly and said it was just awful.
Chris, we just did this.
Small.
I mean, we Mary and I came into the meeting on primary day in 2018. That was just the last election cycle, and I think we made very clear then, this is the worst precinct I've ever seen. I mean, by far. And it had long lines at 11 o'clock in the morning, which is quite a feat for a primary. We came in, we were very adamant about this, and then we convinced a unanimous vote of our colleagues. And as we have witnessed today, a unanimous vote is not easy to obtain. And I'm just surprised that we're even here talking about the possibility of using this facility unless they've made drastic changes. They've doubled the size of the room, or unless there is literally no other alternative.
Shockingly, I agree.
Why can't we go back to B'nai Israel?
Yeah, I agree with that.
I haven't contacted B'nai Israel, but everything that I can find, the voters are fine with Shriver. It is a temporary location. 39 comment cards for the primary election from Shriver. How did you arrive at the polling place? 22 automobiles, 11 walked, 1 biked, 1 used public transit, 4 no response. Is this polling place convenient? 38 out of 39 said completely. 1 said somewhat. Is this polling place well run? 35 said completely. 4 said somewhat. Are the election workers in the polling place welcoming? 36 voters out of 39 said completely.
Yeah,
3 said somewhat.
Chris, what you're telling us are things that we know, which are, number one, yes, it's a convenient location, but that's not what we're arguing. We're arguing that it's a convenient location that is totally inadequate to the task. Nor are we arguing about whether our staff or our election judges did a good job under the circumstances, although I will tell you, they were frazzled. I saw it. And they had reason to be frazzled. They had lines going out the door in the middle of the day. And we also know that comment cards are not.
Kennedy Shriver is off the list. We should go back to B'nai Israel.
Yes.
Is that what I'm hearing?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, we'll go. All right, go
Great.
to B'nai.
Thank you, Margaret.
Thank you.
Okay.
If we can, right, we have to ask them.
It's inexpensive, but doesn't make any difference. Let's go.
Okay, so now we're at
The
Lux
question,
Manor.
yes, that is the question. Can we go back to Lux Manor for the general election
And they-
for this precinct?
They tell us we can.
You can't.
That's what.
So
they
the question
can.
is, wherever we
The
go,
question
so
is
if we
how
get to
we
go to
about
B'nai Israel,
about doing the primary general.
are you going to allow us to return the voters that live in that precinct back to Lux Manor Elementary School, which is in the precinct?
Go to the same place both times.
Yeah, we don't like to split.
It's easier.
primary
I would
and general.
like time to think about it, because I think it's a tough call.
Yeah, we've done it before. Figure it out.
Okay, so you want a month to think about it?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Please.
Good.
Okay, then we'll pass this. Twin Brook Elementary, 427 and 438, we had at the rec center. We had them there because of the ballot style. We no longer have use of the rec center, so we're returning them to their original polling place. There will be no conflict with the ballot style for this election.
Why do we no longer have use of the rec center?
The rec center feels that it is cumbersome to host elections, so they denied us when we put out the appeal.
Wow. And
It looks kind of.
while we're helping the city of Rockville to do their election, they are refusing to allow their community center to be used as a polling place?
They're charged.
Oh.
The city of Rockville is charged by the state board.
For our services.
Yes.
Okay?
They're paying for those employees that are working.
Well,
They're not
do we
us.
not pay for the rec center?
We don't pay for the rec center.
They had us there gratis.
And is the elementary school, is it within the precinct? I can't really see the precinct here.
Looks more welcome.
I don't, in fact, I don't see a map. Where's the map for this one? I don't see a map for this one.
I didn't put a map in for this one.
You didn't?
427?
Okay, so
Where is it in this pile? Mine starts at 5:15. Oh, I see. It picks up at the end. So
okay, so we're looking at.
You actually do, it's after the 417.
It's in 407.
So, all right. So the elementary school is in 407. The precinct we're talking about is 427 and 438. Is 438 just that little sliver there, or no? There's more down the street.
Yes, that is not contiguous, but they're very small precincts.
I thought precincts have to be contiguous.
Look on the next page, David, 438.
No, they don't.
They
don't?
They don't, no.
You can have a precinct that is not contiguous?
Yes, that's how you ended up with some of these precinct lines the way they did.
I mean, I know that the lines around Twin Brook Parkway are very complicated, but
They're not contiguous. We've had.
Created this one after the last round of
When
redistricting.
we went through the
Right.
census the last time, we have precincts that are following such imaginary lines. Oh my God.
so, okay.
So it was a consolidated situation before 2018. So we're returning these two to their original location.
You said that they both were at Twin Brook before?
Yes.
They're small precincts.
And are they the same district, are they the same ballot style?
They will be for this election.
Does that mean that we're going to move them in 2020?
In 2022.
In 2022?
That will be
census,
after
that'll be
the
up to you guys.
census. It'll be, I should say
It'll
it'll
be
be
a whole new
completely different.
legislative district, all new county district.
By 22, yeah, okay.
So you guys
Okay.
can do whatever you want. Slice them and dice them as much as you want.
Right.
So it will remain this way through 2020.
Are there any other buildings that are possibilities? I guess the answer is probably no.
No.
Okay.
Okay. Silver Creek is 1303. It's in their precinct. It's about 2,400 registered voters, about 43% in turnout in 2018. The location was Temple Emmanuel. The reason that we are moving, it's a public facility and it's accessible. This building is a block away from Temple Emmanuel, and Temple Emmanuel has served us well. They have been good to the Board of Elections, but now we have a public facility within the precinct.
That just opened not long ago.
Yes, it opened.
Wait, what street is Temple Emmanuel on?
It's on
Connecticut Avenue.
Connecticut, but
Yeah.
the address for
That's
this
my
is Saul
neighborhood.
Avenue.
Yeah, this is your precinct,
Your
probably.
Yeah.
This is probably your precinct.
It is.
I
Yeah.
just haven't voted there in okay, good 20 years.
Okay, so there's Temple Emmanuel and there's Silver Creek. And there's the cafeteria in Silver
This
Creek.
is fun.
Whoops.
You're good.
The parking
Oh,
there,
you're right, that's my neighborhood.
It's handicap parking, and it is accessible. There's 110 spaces. And the red star indicates where Silver Creek is, and Temple Emmanuel's at the top of the precinct, and that's probably not more than a block away.
Maybe 2 or 3.
Okay, 1305, 1310, 1350. We have created a voting center. Silver Spring Civic Building will host about 8,200 people. The turnout, the average turnout of those three precincts was about 33%.
Is that primary or
That
general?
that place has been a madhouse every time I've been there.
Well, this is, if you've visited for early voting, this
Where
will
are
be
those now?
somewhat
These
different
precincts?
with
Okay,
election
so,
day.
So what are you talking about? Let me
Voting.
address this. We are suggesting that we move out of the Silver Spring Library because it was just not equipped to take on the number of people that are in that area. The next one, which is 1305, the next precinct is 1310, which was the Maryland Park and Planning Auditorium. That facility is gone. It's gone. Well, it may be awful, but it's not going to be available to us any longer. So we suggest moving that facility into the Silver Spring Library. And then finally, the
You mean
Sligo
Civic
Creek
Building.
Elementary School is under construction. We are not suggesting that this be a permanent move, but they should vote at the Silver Spring Civic Building during this construction period. There is not a lot of choices in the Silver Spring area. If you recall, we were in the NOAA building, and we were invited not to come back. I guess that's the way to put it. They presented some serious security issues, starting with requiring everyone to present ID, which is not conducive to conducting elections. So it is going to, first of all, the Silver Spring Library, as well as the Silver Spring, a lot of the individuals already are voting early, but we anticipate that this would have to be treated very similar to a early voting center with probably we would take over not only the main grand hall, but also one of the side rooms to help facilitate provisional voting in that facility during election day.
Have you considered the
Middle school.
Isn't there a middle school where Blair High School once was?
That is the international school.
Right.
And the international school, which I didn't put on here, and Sligo Creek cohabitate in the same building. So when I say Sligo Creek is under construction, the international intermediate school,
Is
middle
also
school,
under construction?
is under construction. That whole campus is under construction.
So the whole campus is not available for 2020?
For 2020.
That's for both elections?
Yes.
It's occupied now, but not next year, you're saying?
Correct.
Well, if it's occupied now, then it's available for the primary.
But
No,
you just
it's-
got done saying you don't want us to buy it.
It is not.
Purple Line Construction.
Purple Line Construction too.
Yeah.
I
It is the one.
I advocate putting precincts together anyway into bigger buildings. As you all know, and I'm going to just say it for the record, I think we ought to have all of the voting in Montgomery County in the high schools. Consolidate all the precincts into the high schools, nearest them, because there's public transportation and there's parking.
And when we do that for across the county on a uniform basis, I think that's a proposal worth considering. But in the meantime, we're talking about doing it only for these 3 precincts.
Well, and I'm saying I advocate consolidating where we can.
And if I may, construction and MCPS, it's my observation that it's not typically what we've observed in the past, where things went from school year to school year. They're dividing up their school years, and buildings are started in January, or the students are moved out in December to a holding school, and they'll start construction. That's the case with this one. They have a lot of projects going on, and they're not necessarily staying strictly to the school year that we're accustomed to.
Right. Kevin, a question for you. The state passed a legislation not that long ago about what we have to do when we move polling places, as I recall. There was some notice requirement.
We did post a notice that this was under consideration.
So you're saying that we posted it on our website and that's all that's required by the law? This is a very big change to have 3 precincts voting at the Civic Center that are used to voting in their neighborhood.
It was posted on the website. This is just for consideration. It'll get posted again for you all actually vote on this, whether it be in November or December.
Okay. Thank you.
This is informational at this point.
Okay.
Okay.
Yes, we did post the notice.
And then in your packet, I've divided it up, and it shows more stats on each individual precinct.
When you say turnout, what turnout is that? Is that primary or general?
This was the general election that we were using stats for.
So when it says 2018 turnout, that's a 2018 general.
General.
All right.
Okay. And that's the Silver Spring Library, which when we're talking about are voters happy, voters were not particularly happy being on the 3rd floor of Silver Spring Library and using the elevators and having to come in multiple directions. They felt it confusing.
Oh my God.
And as Ms. Jurgensen mentioned, the Park and Planning is moving up to Wheaton. This building would be available for April, but will not be available in November. And Sligo Creek and the International School are both going to be under construction. And this shows the locations. And then Silver Spring is basically in the middle.
So have you done a comparison of the number of voters you expect on election day to, say, a busy day of early voting, and how that compares?
I looked up what Silver Spring did the last day in the general.
Okay.
And it was a little over 3,000 people
Okay.
visited Silver Spring that day to vote, the last day of early voting.
So it looks like we're looking at roughly the same if the turnout stays the same. Because you
Yes.
added 3 precincts together that are roughly just shy of 9,000. And you have a turnout that is going to be about a third.
Yes, thank you. And I think the pattern, the voter pattern's a little bit different on election day than it is the last night of early voting. So I don't anticipate that crush that we
At the end of the
experience at the end of the day, last day of early voting. And then Montgomery Blair would be the 1323 would host our Pinecrest location.
I have a question about that one.
Okay, Pinecrest is under construction, and so the turnout is, or excuse me, the registered voters about 2,700. The turnout was 50%. The reason is for the changes, Pinecrest is under construction. Blair is in precinct, it's a public facility, it's compliant electioneering, good parking, room size, and this is a photo of Pinecrest and Montgomery Blair. And they're in precinct, they're not that far from each other. And the children or families that would go to Pinecrest would feed into the high school.
I have a concern about this one. It looks like it is technically within the precinct, but obviously the vast majority of the precinct is on the other side of University Boulevard, and would have to cross. That's actually the point at which University Boulevard splits in two. So they have, I'm talking about 1323.
It's your last.
It's near the end. And for anyone who's familiar with University Boulevard and Colesville Road, that's 4 corners. It's where University splits into pieces. And if you live in the Pinecrest neighborhood, which is the vast majority of that precinct, it requires crossing 2 major, one major roadway in 2 different places, basically, by going to Montgomery Blair. So my question is, have you looked into St. Bernadette's, which is the church that's on the same side of University Boulevard with Pinecrest Elementary?
We did not, because we had the location of the high school
in the precinct.
Well, I would ask that we at least consider that option, because I think we are, and I've been to Pinecrest many times when they're voting. It's a crowded precinct. You saw that's a 50% turnout, I would think that before we make everyone cross the major roadway, that we would consider the in-precinct option. This is actually very similar to something we did at about a mile down the road with Northwood High School, where across the street the board voted to keep the private facility in that instance as well.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thanks for the maps.
You're welcome.
Okay, next. Go home. Okay, wait time. That's me.
There's something here. Yes, that'll count.
Okay. Forgetting. All right, so basically, addressing elections and wait times.
Before we get to that, could I just make a request? Could Chris's presentation on this be put on the website?
Sure.
Okay, thank you.
With your picture, Chris.
Yeah.
I'm on paper.
Chris's picture.
Okay.
Oh, sorry.
So, I know we have a lot to cover in the board executive session. So, basically, no citizen should have to wait 30 minutes or more. Allison and I were one of the first individuals that was invited by the Presidential Commission on Election Administration down to the bipartisan policy office to discuss this, and we brought our opinions to them with regards to local government resources in terms of the ability to meet this requirement. So we've identified on numerous occasions the wait times. We have the 12 precincts that had a peak wait time of 60 to 120 minutes, but the average wait time was 30 minutes. We had our moderate wait group, which had 45 polling places. Peak wait time was 35 to 55. Average wait time outside of peak was 13 minutes.
And this was for all day long.
This is 2018 general election.
And all day long, you averaged the votes to the time.
Yes, and I'm going to get into that, what we're measuring. Short wait group, 77 polling places. Peak wait time, 20 to 30 minutes. Average wait time was 5 minutes. And then we had 120 polling places. Peak wait time, 15 minutes or less. Average wait time. So what do I use? Initially, we start out with the equipment allocation formula that comes from the MIT line optimization to determine the amount of equipment, number of election judges, number of voting stations, based on the expected voter turnout, and then, of course, SBE recommendations. So we have that MIT data. Then I also use wait time precinct data. Since 2014, we have been gathering data from the precincts related to how long it takes to vote. Now, some of the data is no good because it's touchscreen. And 2016, when we first had the introduction of the DS200s, we used one method of measuring wait times. Allison and I were in agreement. It wasn't doing a very good job because it didn't measure the choke point at the ballot table. So we used a different method. We've had a mixed result in success in terms of election judges filling that out. But it does provide us quite a bit of data, and I think the election judges did a great job filling out as much data as they did, because let's face it, their primary job is to conduct the election, not record wait times. We also use the ballot use data. I use demographic information of the composition of the voters in the precinct, chief judge logs, equipment usage data, polling place survey, parking planning data, and past voter turnout. So in 2012, the first time that triggered the Presidential Election Commission study on election administration, the average wait time in the state of Maryland is 36 minutes. It was 33 minutes in Montgomery County. 2014, not a big voter turnout, 4 minutes in the county, 2 minutes in the county, 4 minutes statewide. 2016, statewide, it was 16 minutes, countywide, it was 9 minutes. And the average state in 2018, the wait time was 8 minutes. Our county for the average was 7 minutes. The average peak wait time in the county was 20 minutes. But were there precincts that went long? Yes, there were. So 2020, based on whether you're talking to me or you're talking to the state, the voter turnout is actually, the state's projection is 717,500 registered voters. My number was a little bit lower, but we'll go with the state. Possibly 904,000 ballots on election day. We are planning on increased use of the ballot marking device. I'm sure at the biennial you heard We have to increase the numbers. I plan on increasing it even further as much as the equipment will allow. Also, early voting and mail is and online ballot delivery is going to have an impact on the amount of things. So what were contributing factors to the long lines in 2018? The 3-card ballot, ballot stubs, got rid of that, thank you.
Yes, nice
Ballot stubs created dust, it jammed the scanner, and also torn bits of paper, which caused us to have to send out roamers to unjam. Rain and high humidity affected the paper. Ballot needed more judges. At that time during the administration, we were told to manage voter expectation, to expect lines, but yes, they were not expecting to stand in line for as long as they did in those particular precincts. Needed more scanners? Yes, we did. Pressure on election judges to move through voters faster. So what are we changing since 2018? Number one, we've ordered more equipment, more scanners, poll books, and ballot marking devices. We increased the number of voters. That's going to happen. We're increasing the number of election judges. We're going to have same-day voter registration implementation on election day. I'm not quite as frightened about that because it's been successful in Minneapolis, which I consider a comparative city. And we have automatic registration, which is a pain in terms of the number of duplicates voter registration services is currently receiving, but it does capture the most updated information.
What's the difference between automatic registration and same-day registration?
When you show up at the driver's license place to get a state ID or a driver's license renewal or license your car, you automatically are registered to vote.
Off-site.
Okay. Solutions, more voting booths. When you go through the chief judge logs, that's one of the things they ask for. So we're throwing out as many voting booths as we can. More scanners, I've told you that. More election judges, that's why we asked for the supplemental. Line management tools are being implemented for our larger precincts, improved signage to move lines. More seated voting stations, and that has to do, I'm also having greater sensitivity to a certain type of demographic group that might be more susceptible to wanting seated voting, people that are in my age group and up. More roamers for tech support. The county has already agreed to provide us 25 additional tech support on election day, so that's going to be helpful. More election judges have been requested, greeters in large precincts, and a mailer to the provisional voters of 2018. So what did I request? I requested 144 DS200 scanners with accompanying blue bins, 38 ballot marking devices. This might actually get changed.
Higher, lower?
Higher.
Okay.
Because we were waiting for the state to make their decision on the upgrade. 146 electronic poll books, 154 printers, 255 booths, 50 ADA booths, and we will increase the number of seated voting stations.
So that
we
request-
increase the at the end of, you can ask me questions. Increase the number of voting operations judges. That's going to help address the voting operation, the check-in station, as well as the ballot table, which is one of our known choke points. Align greeters with the high precincts with high population, address more space, square footage for the provisional voters, and increase the number of roamers and improve communication. One of the things that we are doing and implementing for our roamers is to implement the use of iPads so that as we hear about something, we can transmit that directly to the field. And the field, so instead of having 7 or 8, they're going to be down to 4 or 5, depending on the geography of the area.
4 or 5 what?
4 or 5 precincts instead of 7 or 8.
So you're going to have about twice as many roamers?
Yes. Same day voter registration.
That's great.
So what are these outstanding issues? The state is not really very clear right now on the same day voter registration process implementation. Depends on successful recruitment of needed election judges. So far, so good. Getting a nice response. Funding for the increased number of election judges. To get the number of election judges, to get the 30-minute wait time, you have to have a certain number of election judges. That supplemental appropriation that we asked you to approve, the staff submitting, is a giant step to making it happen. Questions? Yes.
When you said you were requesting more equipment, that is in addition to our normal complement of equipment?
Yeah,
Slide
we're
11.
not taking anything away
Right,
from us.
all of that is designed to address this issue and
Yeah.
not from, and you requested it of the state, I gather?
Yes.
And they have not answered yet, or they have?
No, we're starting to get the equipment.
Right, I mean, so basically, we made the request, and they have said yes, and then the only question is whether we decide, or you decide, as time goes on, whether you need more.
Yeah.
And then you have to request more.
The problem is, we're out of space. I mean, Janet's going, I don't know, I mean, we actually told the state, the express printers that go with the ballot marking device that we have, that we've never been allowed to use, that we're paying for, or leasing for. I told the state to make arrangements for them to haul that away.
Right.
And we're going to instead put the extra ballot marking devices. I mean, I'm shoehorning anything I can into the warehouse.
Okay.
Yay!
Good, thank you.
Thank you,
Nice. Margaret, you have a question?
Yes, I'm sorry.
Do we know how the extra equipment in terms of taking up space is going to affect sort of the movement in the room? Because if there's more equipment in the room, then presumably you can't get as many people in the room.
Janet knows what she's doing.
In the polling place you're talking about?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, no, that's not going to really, no. The answer is no. Here, okay, the part that I didn't cover, just because Allison said to me, Margaret, you're going too far into the weeds. Okay, so what happens is I do the first run through, and the staff, okay, so I do my first run through. I hand it off to Janet, Brian, who's the supply guy, and Chris, and hand it off to them. They look at it. We have a meeting. Everybody sits down and comes to an agreement. And in that discussion, we sit there and say, Margaret, you picked the Damascus Library, which is teeny tiny. And they said, you cannot put 3 scanners in there. And so I'll say, okay, that's, let's not do that. So what we do is an adjustment. And then we continue to, and if I can't do that, can I put an extra ballot marking device? Because I think there's going to be 1,000 extra voters there. So what we do is an adjustment. And so between now and January, everything has to be finalized. And then the state steps in and they look at all of my numbers and say, yes, no, we think you should have. They've never said you have too few pieces of equipment out there. Yes.
In a number of places you've suggested, which I think is a good idea, to have more election judges. I also know from our experience, as long as I've been on the board, that we frequently are not able to get as many as we would like, even when
You
we
mean to
have.
hire them?
Hire them.
Not pay them, okay, go ahead.
Right, no. What I'm saying is that even with a budget to pay for them, you've got to find them. And I guess my question is there anything that we're planning in order to find more people, given that it seems like we have a certain amount of, every election there seems to be a certain amount of attrition, and you end up with issues. And the number one complaint we hear from chief judges is, I need more people.
Yeah, well, that's kind of a double-edged sword, because some of the chief judges, I don't think if I gave them twice as many, they would ever be happy.
Right.
And I respect that. I mean, they've got a hard job to do. We're going to make sure that, obviously, I as well as the staff are really very sensitive to the wait times that happened on election day.
Right.
And we're really sensitive to trying to address the peak wait time.
Yep.
Okay?
Yep.
But I'm also aware that if you have 150 people standing outside the door at 7 a.m., no amount of equipment is going to be able to, move that through. So we're going to do what we have always done. We're going to push information out about vote by mail. We're going to push information out about election day. And we're also going to push out information that if you're, we're trying to improve the sample ballot so that you can make sure that you not only vote in your precinct, correct precinct, but these are the non-peak times to go vote.
Right.
No. Okay, so that's what we're trying to do.
Right, but how about in terms of what we're going to do to recruit more judges?
Well, you know.
And that could be a
we're-
discussion in another meeting.
Yeah,
you know.
we're doing a pretty good job. I mean, I think I said just, we got 93 election judges out of the first National Voter Registration Day. Roberto's doing a pretty great job in his outreach going into the high schools. There was an event, we've just had it, or it's coming up, at the Rockville Montgomery College campus. So we are doing a lot of things. Our problem, quite honestly, when I talk to Leslie, is Bethesda Chevy Chase. You know, getting people to work down there. The residents don't want to work there, and getting people to go in there to work. That is, that one is a hair raiser of a problem.
May I add just a little, that chart that Kira put forward earlier with the structural deficit, the personnel dollars that we throw at recruiters is a big part of that. I mean, Margaret's been putting more and more and more money into the poll worker recruiters as well as the trainers, but the recruiters are one. I mean, we have been putting more money, more resources, more recruiters earlier, and without the increase in the personnel costs. So as Kira's been going through the exercise of trying to discipline our budget, she's just seeing red, just bleeding red in poll worker recruiting. And so that's what we've been doing, and that's what Margaret's been committing to doing, but that's just where a good chunk of that estimate of what the structural deficit is came from, is that we are spending the money on that, and we have not really had funds for it.
It just seems like we frequently, when it gets near election day or on election day, we end up with many fewer. And I guess maybe one way of tracking this is just to ask that you let us know how we're doing compared to 2 years ago at this time or 4 years ago at this time in terms of our numbers. Because if we actually want to have more people than we had 2 or 4 years ago at this time, I know that we can't do it all at the end. And I know you don't want to do it all at the end. But it just seems like, I think it's absolutely right that equipment is not enough. We have to have people. And I just feel like it would be good to have an idea before we get at the end as to how we're doing compared to past benchmarks.
David, I'm monitoring it all the time. We've got a couple more items, and then we have to go into executive session. But we are monitoring there's like 3 points. Okay, the number of people. So we'll do a big drop first part of December, saying books are open, please come in, sign up, confirm your registration, and take the quiz. And then, is it December we're doing that, or January 1st? When is she rolling it out? December 1st. Okay, then we start, and what happens is at the very beginning you get all these people that are super excited, and they sign up for quizzes and things like that. Then there's a lull. It's during that lull that we have to get on the phone and start cold calling all of these election judges and say, hey, you signed up, wouldn't you like to do your quiz? And here's your ID number, and because unless they pass the quiz, they can't be an election judge. Okay, and we're also trying to consolidate the training so that it's more focused hands-on, so that they're not spending 4 hours of people talking to them. Good. They're actually touching the poll books, touching the scanner, touching, Allison, you're working with Julia right now, touching the BMD, all of these things, so that the training is worthwhile.
That sounds great.
Okay? And I'll be happy to, after January, but realistically February, start briefing the board as to where we're at.
That would be great, especially if we can compare to 4 years ago and 2 years ago.
I don't know if I could do that, but we'll try.
Right. Okay, thank you.
So we're going to the minutes committee.
All right, let's do it.
Yeah,
Okay.
next month.
Next month.
Janet has two-sentence security. What are we doing? We're talking about.
We're going to two-factor authentication for the county, and it's going to roll out for us on November 4th. And it's similar to what we do for the state, except for we don't have a token. Everybody has to set up an alternate contact. Like when I went to set up the laptop, I had to run back over here because they sent me a code and I couldn't get on.
To your personal phone?
No, to my work phone.
To your work phone.
But I can give them my personal phone. I can figure out which one I want to use.
So
Because not everybody
so
has a
there-
work phone throughout the county.
So my point in her is there's going to be 6 layers of security before you get to empty voters.
Okay.
All right,
Yeah, the minutes committee has requested we put this over.
okay?
Put it on next month, Lisa.
Okay. Disclosure of campaign contributions.
Yeah, Kevin, our bylaws have not been approved yet, have they?
Not by the state yet, no.
Okay, so that's part of the proposed bylaws, but my view is until they're approved, we don't have to do that.
Okay.
Unless anybody
All
wants
right,
to do it
then
voluntarily.
we need to go into executive session.
You all have minutes, are you gonna hold those over?
I think
till
that's,
next-
can I move? We go to executive session? Move.
Is there a second?
I think we ought to give an award to the 2 ladies. The whole time.
Do we have a second?
I'd like to do that.
All those in favor? Aye.
Who was the second?
David.
David.
Yes.
So we're
I
going
got
to
to
go
know.
well, we gotta
Stay
go
up to
public
move ahead on the budget.
session. We're now in public session.
Okay.
Jackie, your motion?
I move that we have the staff move ahead with the budget. Yeah, second proposals.
Any discussion? No? All those in favor?
Aye. Okay, good, thank you.
No,
Thank
now we
you.
need to adjourn.
We go
Move to
home.
adjourn.
Finish our Yes. move.
Alan,
Second.
Second.
I got one from Diane.
All those in favor?
Aye.
I thought I should start.
Do you want the memos back too?